Chapter 1161. Although it was said that there would be a grand banquet for 10 days, Ning Fan certainly did not have the mood to celebrate for 10 days. For this victory, the Eastern Heavens cultivators sacrificed a lot. Of course, because of Ning Fan's intervention, the number of casualties was far less than expected. 600,000 second step immortals had died in battle. Of the immortal emperors, 6 died in battle, 3 defected and 1 went crazy. The sage-to-be experts also paid a heavy price. Xiang Yizhi lost half of his physical body, Daoist Mu Song lost his entire physical body, the old man Huda destroyed his palm space, and the 5th elder and the 6th elder of the southern tribe also suffered heavy injuries. This victory was not easy to come by. Compared to this great chaos that could easily affect an entire world, the Eastern Sky's past wars and sect wars weren't even worth mentioning. Due to the ancient desolate seal, Ning Fan could not go to the northern heaven for the time being. He had no choice but to be patient and put an end to the war that swept across the entire Eastern Realm River. The living were lucky, but the dead and injured were unlucky. In this war at the border river, the Eastern Sky cultivators who were seriously injured numbered no less than 200,000 people. It was not suitable for the injured to travel too far, so most of them were settled at Taiyuan Ferry. Countless cultivators who were skilled in medicine and alchemy were responsible for taking care of these injured heroes. As a Gold Core 9th Revolution Dan Master, Ning Fan's Dan concoction technique was an indispensable skill in treating the injured. Ouyang Nuan's alchemy skills were also very high. She had put in a lot of effort to treat the injured. Secretly, Ning Fan even planned to order several Gold Core Dan Masters in the incense space to refine pills for the wounded in the Eastern Sky. Unfortunately, these pill refinement masters who were merely incense slaves could no longer serve Ning Fan. They were not Eastern Heaven cultivators, they were natives of the extreme Dan sacred region. Logically speaking, they could not live in the outside world. Although living in the Joss Stick world was different from living in the Eastern Sky, they still suffered the huge side effect of leaving the extreme Dan sacred region, the curse of the southern medicine sage. The biggest reason why the native cultivators of the extreme Dan sacred region could not live in the outside world was because of the curse of the saints. This was also the reason why Ning Fan did not bring Duo Lan away in the past. The cultivation bases of all the incense slaves that Ning Fan brought out from the extreme Pills sacred region in the past began to drop day by day. They were also heading towards death day by day. Those incense slaves who helped Ning Fan mine the gold and silver ores were getting weaker day by day. Some of them could no longer mine the ores. Those pill refinement masters could no longer serve Ning Fan. They begged Ning Fan to release them back to the extreme Dan sacred region as soon as possible. Otherwise, if they continued to stay in the Eastern Heaven, they would die of weakness sooner or later. Considering that these pill refinement masters had once helped him concoct the Dragon Horse 16 Hearts pill, Ning Fan did not have the heart to let these pill refinement masters die. Left with no other choice, he used a secret ice sealing technique in the cultivation world that could preserve life force to seal these pill refinement masters in ice while they were still in a state of tortoise hibernation. Although it couldn't prevent their cultivation from dropping, it could at least preserve their life force. In the future, when Ning Fan finds a way to return to the extreme Dan sacred region, he would keep his promise and set them free. As for the other incense slaves, unfortunately, Ning Fan did not have the ability to seal everyone in ice. This kind of secret technique that preserves one's life force would cause quite a lot of damage to the caster. Even if Ning Fan exhausts all of his life force, he would not have the ability to save all of the incense slaves. Besides, what obligation did he have to save these people? These incense slaves were his enemies in the first place. He should have killed them all in the past. Ning Fan had never been a kind person. It was impossible for him to hurt himself to save his enemies. His last mercy was limited to using an illusion technique to make these incense slaves who were gradually dying fall into a deep sleep. At least, they would not feel the pain and fear of dying. It could also be considered as a reward for their contributions in mining all these years. I digress. For a few months, Ning Fan and Ouyang Nuan led a large group of pill refinement masters in the Eastern Heaven, busily concocting pills and treating the injured. After a few months, all the injured, including Xiang Yizhi and the other quasi-saints, were out of danger. What was left was a long period of self-healing. At least, there was no need for Ning Fan to continue staying at the Taiyuan ferry. Finally, one day, Ning Fan bid farewell to Xiang Yizhi and the other quasi-saints. They decided to leave the Taiyuan ferry and return to the Eastern Heaven with their subordinates. Ning Fan's battle record of defeating Xue and Gung Wu shook the hearts of every cultivator in the Eastern Heaven. Everyone was in awe of the powerful and invincible Ning Fan. Xiang Yizhi was the only one who talked to Ning Fan naturally as an old friend. Be it Taoist Mu Song or the two elders of the Nan clan, each of them was a little uneasy and polite when facing Ning Fan. It was like how a junior would lower their head when facing an elder. This young man can even defeat Xue and Gung Wu. He really hid his strength well. Be it the Dark Clan or the other clans, everyone was deceived by his strength. Whether it is because his cultivation base has reached the level of an ancient great cultivator or because he has some kind of special method to achieve this, he is not someone I can compare to. Fortunately, I unintentionally planted a willow tree and formed a good relationship with him. Thus, I don't have to worry about becoming his enemy in the future. However, when I face him in the future, I can no longer call myself a senior. I must show him some respect. This was Taoist Mu Song's inner thoughts. Our Nan clan is still the smartest. When this young man killed the clone of a quasi-sage in the past, we already knew that he is an ancient great cultivator who has hidden his strength well. However, we didn't expect him to be able to defeat Xue and Gung Wu, who is also an ancient great cultivator. It seems like this young man is a top-notch expert even among the ancient great cultivators. Our Nan clan can't afford to offend this kind of person. We can only treat him with respect. This was the inner thoughts of the two quasi-sages of the Nan clan. Ning Fan did not know what Mu Song and the quasi-sages of the Nan clan were thinking. Neither did he care. He was just a little speechless at their restraint. It seems like these people are determined to treat me like an ancient great cultivator, because Niu Manshan had made it clear in advance that he did not want Ning Fan to expose his existence. Ning Fan did not plan to explain too much to Mu Song and the others. He could only let them misunderstand him for the time being. Are you planning to return to the Eastern Heaven now? Don't you plan to stay here and help us old farts heal? Xiang Yizhi said with a smile. Half of his physical body was made of flesh and blood while the other half was created using magic to temporarily make up the numbers. Originally, he had no choice but to create this half-real and half-illusory body because half of his physical body was destroyed. However, recently, Xiang Yizhi seemed to have comprehended something. This half-real and half-illusory body actually gave Ning Fan a mysterious feeling. It was unpredictable, which made him feel amazed. I'm planning to go back. Seniors, your injuries have already been stabilized. As for the remaining injuries, I suppose all of you have already found a way to deal with them. Otherwise, it would be impossible for you to look so happy these days. Ning Fan answered. Xiang Yizhi and the other quasi-sages seemed to have paid a huge price in this battle, but the benefits they obtained were even greater. During that battle, their lives were hanging by a thread and they almost died in the battle. At the moment when they were on the brink of death, each of them obtained a great understanding of life and death. It was immensely beneficial to their cultivation base in the future. Taoist Mu Song vaguely saw a path that could lead him to the third level of the quasi-sage realm. Xiang Yizhi was even more certain about the path of the second level of the quasi-sage realm. Once his physical body is restored, he could officially break through to the second level of the quasi-sage realm. Moreover, it seemed like he had comprehended some kind of supreme profound technique between the illusory and the real. Even though Old Man Ho Tu had shattered the void space in his palm, his understanding of the Tao of Earth had become deeper and improved by leaps and bounds. The two quasi-sages of the southern race had also obtained a profound understanding which was greatly beneficial to their cultivation base. As a result, these quasi-sages were naturally in a good mood. However, when this scene fell into the eyes of the others, they felt a little strange. Why are they still so happy after paying such a heavy price? Ordinary people really could not understand what Xiang Yitzi and the others were so happy about. Ning Fan naturally understood. Now that he mentioned it, Xiang Yitzi and the others smiled even more. Judging from your expression, you seem to be in a hurry to return to the Eastern Heaven. I suppose you have something important to do, right? Do you need help? Xiang Yitzi asked with a smile. If Ning Fan has a request, he would certainly help. This was without a doubt. Even if he only had half of his physical body left, it would still be the same. Ning Fan shook his head. It's not something dangerous. Senior, just focus on healing your injuries. You don't have to worry. All right. If that's the case, we won't keep you any longer. Even though the chaos in the Eastern Realm River has been settled, you still have to be extra careful after returning to the Eastern Heaven. Be wary of the ancient devil opening its devil cavity and descending to launch a sneak attack on you. Xiang Yitzi had already heard about the descent of Daoist Xian Wei's devil cavity. That was why he reminded Ning Fan, hoping that he would not be careless. I will be careful. What Ning Fan did not expect was that he actually met several groups of cultivators who came to welcome him on his way back to the Eastern Heaven. These cultivators had taken the initiative to welcome him. As soon as they received the news that Ning Fan was about to return to the Eastern Heaven, they waited day and night on the path that he had to pass by in order to pass by the Slaughter Palace, just to welcome the triumphant return of a hero. That's right. A hero. It had already been a few months since the Eastern Realm River was settled. These few months were enough for people with ulterior motives to magnify and exaggerate Ning Fan's achievements. Ning Fan's meritorious deed of saving the Eastern Heaven had already spread across the Eastern Heaven. He had become a hero in the hearts of countless cultivators who did not know the truth. In the past, Ning Fan was also considered to be famous in the Eastern Heaven. However, his reputation at that time was fierce and evil, which made people fear him. At that time, only a small number of devil cultivators in the Eastern Heaven admired Ning Fan. Most of them still harbored ill feelings towards him. In order to curry favor with the dark race, they even secretly attacked Ning Fan behind his back. Today was different from the past. All the cultivators who understood the severity of the chaos in the Eastern Heaven were grateful to Ning Fan for his deeds of defeating the foreign races and saving the Eastern Heaven. When they talked about Ning Fan again, which of the heroes of the Eastern Heaven did not give him a thumbs up and praise him as a real man and a true hero? Even many people who did not like Ning Fan in the past had no choice but to admit that they had misjudged him after this incident. These people began to repent and began to follow the general trend of praising Ning Fan's achievements. As a result, countless poems praising Ning Fan began to come out. As a result, the public opinion of the world began to change one-sidedly, rapidly changing in the direction that was beneficial to Ning Fan. Some people said that Ning Fan was not a scoundrel. He was just a little romantic. As a hero, what did it matter if he was a little romantic? Only great heroes could show their true colors. Some people said that Ning Fan was not a homicidal maniac. It was just that his way of doing things was a little extreme. As a hero, killing one was a sin. Killing 10,000 was a hero. If he did not kill, what kind of hero was he? If he did not kill his enemies, how could he save the world? Some people said that Ning Fan was not a bad person or a devil. On the contrary, Ning Fan was a good person with great virtue. He was a meritorious person who saved the world. He was a warrior who had broken away from his low-level interests. Some people even said that Ning Fan's achievements were comparable to the Eastern Heaven's ancestor emperor. Before the Eastern Heaven's ancestor emperor died, he said that if someone could save the Eastern Heaven from danger in the future, that person could ascend to the ancestor emperor realm. Very obviously, the current Ning Fan already had the qualifications to succeed the ancestor emperor realm. With Ning Fan's ability to collect information, how could he not know? Today, there were discussions about him everywhere in the Eastern Heaven. Without a doubt, he had become the hottest topic nowadays. More and more people began to flatter him. They almost made him a moral saint and a role model of justice. This made Ning Fan very speechless. He knew what kind of person he was. A role model of morality? He could not be one. The public opinion was a little too exaggerated. This was not a good thing. If anything is exaggerated too much, it will definitely have the opposite effect in the end and attract a large number of opponents. Considering that more and more people were discussing the Eastern Heaven's ancestor emperor's last words, Ning Fan could not help but suspect that this kind of excessive flattery was deliberately promoted by some people. They were not willing to sit and watch him accept the Eastern Heaven's ancestor emperor's last words and ascend to the supreme throne of the ancestor emperor, becoming another Eastern Heaven's ancestor emperor. Eastern Heaven's ancestor emperor, Ning Fan did not care about this kind of meaningless false reputation at all. Furthermore, if it wasn't for the public opinion mentioning this matter, Ning Fan would not have known that the Eastern Heaven's ancestor emperor had actually set up a last words. The one who saves the Eastern Heaven can actually succeed the ancestor emperor realm. This is really boring. We are bathed in blood and fighting at the front, but there are a few rascals at the back who are scheming for a false reputation. Compared to those cultivators who are fighting at the front line, the people who are spreading these rumors are really a little shameless. Ning Fan sneered. He did not know who was spreading these rumors, but he also did not care about it. Compared to the Eastern Heaven's ancestor emperor's last words, he had more important things to do. Thus, he was too lazy to care about this matter. Ning Fan led the cultivators under his command back to the slaughter palace. As soon as he returned to the palace, he went into seclusion in a strange manner. No one knew what Ning Fan was doing during his seclusion. Everyone only knew that the place where Ning Fan was in seclusion would emit a strange fragrance of seafood every day. That kind of fragrance was definitely not something that could be produced by any of the dishes in the Four Heavens realm. This little thief. What is he doing alone in the cave? Zhang Yu was very displeased. For Ning Fan's safety, she did not hesitate to take the risk of running to the World River to save him, since she had just broken through to the Quasi-Saint realm and her cultivation base was still unstable. For Ning Fan, she had suffered injuries all over her body. Even though they were not the heaviest among all the Quasi-Saints, they were definitely not light either. However, Ning Fan actually did not show her enough concern. Not good, really not good at all. Humph. What a heartless little thief. She shouldn't have rushed to save him. Zhang Yu's complaints did not last for long. Because a few days later, Ning Fan walked out of the cave and took out the first batch of cooked cuttlefish balls, intending to feed her. What is this? I don't want to eat it. Zhang Yu rejected proudly. However, she felt a little happy inwardly. She was happy that Ning Fan had found his conscience. This is cuttlefish balls. It is said to be the food refinement that was passed down in the Fu Sang immortal country. Ning Fan answered. Food refinement. Could it be the legendary food refinement that has the same effect as pills? Zhang Yu's expression changed slightly. With her vast experience, she had naturally heard of the food refinement of the Fu Sang immortal country. The Fu Sang immortal country was one of the many immortal countries in the true world. The cultivators in the country did not cultivate the Tao of pills but the Tao of food. They did not refine pills but only refined ingredients for the sake of food refinement. Food refinement was actually similar to pills. Some could improve cultivation base while some could be used to heal injuries and detoxify. Compared to pills which only had a single taste, the taste of food refinement was much more delicious. However, the process of making food refinement was much more complicated than pills. Unlike normal cooking, it required a lot of special techniques and even the soul eater, which was at the same level as the medicine soul. Even though the food refinement of the Fu Sang immortal country was famous, it had never spread to outsiders. In the past, Zhang Yu had never been to the Fu Sang immortal country before. She had only heard about the food refinement from rumors. She had never tasted it before. Today, it was her first time tasting it. These cuttlefish balls are cooked using the flesh of a dark great cultivator. Its medicinal power is extremely strong. Eating one of them is almost equivalent to eating a 9-revolution emperor pill. Your injuries are quite serious. Eat some of them. It's good for your body. Ning Fan said with concern. Zhang Yu actually became obedient for once and did not argue with Ning Fan. With a red face, she ate one of the cuttlefish balls that Ning Fan fed her. Delicious. Zhang Yu smiled satisfyingly. It was unknown whether she was satisfied with the taste of the cuttlefish or Ning Fan feeding her personally. I'm not letting you eat the taste. I'm letting you refine the medicinal power in the cuttlefish balls. Ning Fan was speechless. You don't have a soul either. You definitely can't refine food like this. Did the person who helped you defeat Blood God Gang Wu make this for you? Zhang Yu asked curiously. Sure enough, I can't hide anything from you. Ning Fan did not hide anything and nodded. Even though he promised Niu Manshan that he would not take the initiative to reveal this matter, it was Zhang Yu who found out about it. It was none of his business. You might get hurt if you ask a tiger for its skin. Zhang Yu was a little worried about Ning Fan and reminded him. Don't worry. He has made a great oath of karma with me. He won't harm me. Ning Fan did not explain further. He only said a great oath of karma to make Zhang Yu feel relieved. The great oath of karma was much better than the great oath of heart devil. With this oath, she did not need to worry about Ning Fan's safety. I still want to eat. Alright. Take this plate of dumplings and eat it yourself. I have to help Senior Niu make some more dumplings. These dumplings can not only be used to heal injuries but also for cultivation. However, because the medicinal power of these dumplings is too strong, they can't be eaten by ordinary people. Only half-saints and above can eat them. If not, I can give them to others. Ning Fan said regretfully and turned around to leave. Zhang Yu was displeased again. Just because other people's cultivation bases were not high enough to eat the squid dumplings, this little thief gave them to her to eat. This reason made her unhappy. Besides, Ning Fan actually did not want to feed her anymore. She did not want to eat it herself at all. She wanted Ning Fan to feed her more. However, how could someone as proud as her say such a shameful request? As a result, Zhang Yu could only watch Ning Fan turn around and leave. She held the plate alone, not knowing whether to eat or not. She was so depressed that she kept stomping her feet. This woman actually knows how to act coquettishly in front of me. Even though Ning Fan's back was facing Zhang Yu, his sharp senses allowed him to see all of Zhang Yu's actions. He could not help but laugh in his heart. He never knew that Zhang Yu would have such a feminine side to her. She was a little cute. Therefore, when Ning Fan served the second plate of squid dumplings to Zhang Yu a few days later, he very responsibly slept with her. This turn of events was a little sudden. It made Zhang Yu feel ashamed and resentful. Although it wasn't the first time she did that with Ning Fan's, but don't forget, she was now an injured person. How could Ning Fan do that to her? Doesn't he care about my body at all? Even though her mouth was full of complaints, Zhang Yu's body was more honest. She did not resist at all. Instead, she welcomed Ning Fan's advances. Humph. Sure enough. Sure enough, you're a little thief. You only know how to bully. Ah. Softer. Slower. Slower. My injuries. Don't be afraid. I have a dual cultivation technique that can help you absorb the medicinal power of the food and speed up your recovery. A woman who says one thing but means another. Your body is far more honest than yours. Don't talk nonsense. I'm the great emperor whose name shook the ancient times. No matter how famous I am, I'm going to make you beg for mercy today. Ah. No. It hurts. In short, in the following days, Zhang Yu's injuries healed at an unprecedented speed. Her qi and blood had also increased by more than 10% compared to before she was injured. This was all thanks to the dual cultivation of the cuttlefish ball and Ning Fan. Even her breakthrough to the quasi-saint realm was completely stabilized with Ning Fan's help. As a matter of fact, during the dozens of years that Ning Fan participated in the Great Battle of the Realm River, even though Zhang Yu had luckily broken through to the Quasi-Saint realm, her cultivation base was still a little unstable. She should not have participated in the battle immediately. However, she still went. Because of her injuries, her foundation was already somewhat damaged. She did not tell Ning Fan about all of this. However, with Ning Fan's eyesight, how could he not see through it? Seeing that Zhang Yu's foundation was repaired and her cultivation base was truly stabilized, Ning Fan was relieved. He thought that Niu Manshan did not lie to him. The cuttlefish ball indeed had the miraculous effect of stabilizing one's cultivation base. The fact that Ning Fan and Zhang Yu ate the cuttlefish ball in the day and had sex at night was impossible to hide from Yao Qingyun and the other ladies. Knowing that Ning Fan was helping Zhang Yu heal her injuries, they did not feel dissatisfied. However, Palace Lord of the Massacre Palace, can you share some of the benefits? With this question in mind, some ladies began to join the group of people who had sex at night. Cuttlefish balls were not something that anyone could eat. They also disdained to be jealous over a delicacy. However, they still had to fight for something that was related to their own happiness. Anyway, Ning Fan would not be able to squeeze them dry. The descendant of the ancient Chaos Palace was not a bluff. It was not just a saying that he could have sex as many times as he wanted in a night. The aura of peace enveloped the Massacre Palace and the entire Eastern Heaven. This aura of peace lasted for 10 whole years. After 10 whole years, Niu Manshan finally refined all the flesh of Gung Wu that Ning Fan obtained into food. Even though the cuttlefish balls were small, in order to refine one cuttlefish ball, it usually required a mountainous amount of meat. As a result, even though Gung Wu's physical body was as huge as the starry sky, he could only cook slightly more than 10,000 cuttlefish balls. Half of these cuttlefish balls were eaten by Zhang Yu while the other half was eaten by Ning Fan. Niu Manshan was the one who cooked the food. However, he did not have the luck to eat more cuttlefish balls because he did not have a physical body. He only had his true spirit. He did not have enough qi and blood to withstand the medicinal power of the cuttlefish balls. Every time he ate one, he would need a long time to digest it. Thus, he could only eat some occasionally and taste them. Most of the cuttlefish balls went into Ning Fan and Zhang Yu's stomach. Even so, he still enjoyed making cuttlefish dumplings for Ning Fan and did not complain about it. This was his reward for Ning Fan. The reason why he wanted to repay Ning Fan was because Ning Fan actually found 3 suitable successors for him to inherit the Heavenly Bull bloodline and become his sons. He still remembered that 10 years ago, when Ning Fan just returned to the Massacre Palace, he called for dozens of servants with excellent aptitudes and asked him to choose a few of them to be his sons. Niu Manshan was angry about Ning Fan's behavior at first. He felt that Ning Fan had underestimated his standards for choosing his sons. His sons naturally had to cultivate the Heavenly Bull bloodline. The Heavenly Bull clan did not have a lot of people, but every single one of them was a person with exceptional aptitude. Being a Heavenly Bull clan member did not necessarily mean that he had exceptional aptitude. Only those with exceptional aptitude were qualified to cultivate the Tao of the Heavenly Bull clan. The divine abilities of the Heavenly Bull clan were all on the skin marks. People said that the skin marks of the Heavenly Bull clan were just like the palm marks of Saint Defire. How could the dignified palm marks of Saint Defire be so easy to cultivate? Those who did not possess great wisdom would not be able to cultivate it. Those who were not outstanding talents that appeared once every 1 million years would not be able to cultivate it. The threshold for cultivating the Heavenly Bull bloodline was at least an outstanding talent that appeared once every 1 million years. If one wanted to cultivate the Heavenly Bull bloodline to its peak, only those who harbored evil thoughts could do it. Why? Because of the origin of the Heavenly Bull clan. On the day that a certain immemorial emperor attained the Tao, the will of heaven turned into a sword and cut off half of his palm. That was the beginning of the Heavenly Bull clan. Why did the will of heaven want to cut off that immemorial immortal emperor? It was because that immortal emperor walked the purest supreme evil Tao in the world. The Heavenly Bull clan that was formed from half of his palm was the evilest of evildoers. What was laughable was that the members of the Heavenly Bull clan were actually becoming more honest with each generation due to genetic mutation or something else. They had truly become as honest as bulls, completely deviating from the essence of the Heavenly Bull clan's evil Tao. The fact that the Heavenly Bull clan had never been able to produce a saint was admittedly part of the obstruction caused by the will of heaven, but the deeper reason was that the Heavenly Bull clan had never been able to produce a person who could cultivate the supreme evil Tao to its peak. The sages and immortal emperors of the true world were not willing to help the Heavenly Bull clan cultivate a saint because they were afraid that they would be contaminated by the will of heaven. How difficult would it be for a fourth-step immortal emperor of the true world to cultivate a saint? However, the fact that so many immortal emperors were not willing to be contaminated by the supreme evil Tao of the Heavenly Bull clan showed just how terrifying it was. Immortal Emperor Zido was the only one who was not afraid of the Heavenly Bull clan's evil Tao. Unfortunately, he had died too early and did not have the time to help the Heavenly Bull clan produce a saint. As for the honest Heavenly Bull clan members, they had never seriously considered that the main reason why their clan's powerhouses could not become saints was because their clan members were too honest and could not practice the evil Tao. Niu Manshan was the only one who was different. At such a young age, he dared to flirt with the nuns on the spiritual mountain, provoking the wrath of the heavens of the true world's spiritual mountain. He was clearly an immortal Emperor Zido, but he dared to resent him. In the past, he even wanted to kill all the descendants of Zido out of anger. He had never been a good person. His body was filled with evil energy. Unfortunately, before he could carry out his evil energy, he had promised Celestial Sovereign Zido for the future of the Heavenly Beetle clan. He had turned into the sealed tower and sealed the illusory realm's realm river forever. Niu Manshan was very angry. He felt that Ning Fan was just fooling him by randomly finding a few dozen people for him to choose from. It was an irresponsible act towards his promise. He was a member of the evil Tao. Naturally, he knew that the adopted son he wanted not only needed to have an aptitude that only appeared once in a million years but also the innate talent of the evil Tao that only appeared once in a million years. Only those who worshipped the evil Tao and despised the righteous Tao from the bottom of their hearts would have the hope of bringing the Heavenly Bull clan to greater heights. The reason why he refused to accept Ning Fan as his adopted son was not only because Ning Fan's parents were still alive. More importantly, Ning Fan had principles and justice that ordinary people could not imagine even though he looked like an evil devil on the surface. These were exactly the things that went against the main purpose of the evil Tao of the Heavenly Bull clan. Therefore, even though Ning Fan had heaven-defying aptitude, he still found a rule that the Heavenly Bull clan used to use to reject Ning Fan. He had never been a person who followed the rules. If it wasn't because Ning Fan's nature was not suitable for cultivating the Heavenly Bull skin marks, he would not have cared about the rules his ancestors set. Even if Ning Fan had 8 parents, he would still try to force Ning Fan to acknowledge him as his adopted father. He was Niu Manshan, who was famous for being unscrupulous in the ancient times. Therefore, he was very angry, very angry. Was he looking for an ordinary son? Ning Fan could randomly find a few dozen people for him to choose from. Why should he choose the successor of the Heavenly Bull clan from a pile of trash? You have too low aptitude. You are not qualified. You are too ugly. You are not qualified. You have too much righteousness. You are not qualified. You, and you. All of you are not qualified. Niu Manshan acted arrogantly. In just a few sentences, he had rejected more than half of the geniuses of the Devil Tao and the demonic Tao that Ning Fan had arranged. Those who were rejected by him left resentfully one after another. Before they came, Ning Fan had told them that Niu Manshan was an ancient senior with great abilities. If they could acknowledge him as their father, they would be able to become an immortal emperor at the very least. When they heard that they could become an immortal emperor, which one of them did not want to be in Niu Manshan's eyes? Unfortunately, Niu Manshan's standards were too high. He did not like them at all. The more Niu Manshan looked at this group of people, the angrier he became. What kind of crooked people did Ning Fan arrange for me? They are simply unbearable to look at. They can't be compared to the ancient cultivators. As Niu Manshan continued to reject them, there were only 3 people left in front of him in the end. No, it was not accurate to say that there were only 3 people. In fact, there were only 2 people and a dog. Son of a bitch. Ning Fan actually brought a dog to make up the numbers. Could it be that he wants me to accept a dog as my son? If I accept a dog who can't even transform into a human as my son, wouldn't I be laughed at to death? A dog. It's actually a dog. Niu Manshan was so angry that his teeth itched. He wished that he could stew Crow Tengu in front of him and eat it. However, when he carefully observed Crow Tengu in front of him, his anger instantly froze on his face. Hiss. This is a Tengu. Not an ordinary Tengu. It is actually a demon dog with a traitorous bloodline that appears once every 1 million years in the Tengu clan. As the name suggested, ordinary Tengu were loyal and would not betray their masters. However, this one was different. It was actually a Tengu with a rebellious bloodline. If this traitorous bloodline Tengu is allowed to cultivate the bloodline of the Heavenly Bull, it might really be able to cultivate some skills and walk a path that is different from all the other dogs in the world. Niu Manshan's eyes fell on Old Crow Ba again. He was even more surprised. I was deceived. In the beginning, he only noticed Old Crow Ba's extremely ugly appearance and subconsciously wanted to expel this person. However, when he noticed this person's aptitude, he was instantly shocked. Black luck. Moreover, it was not ordinary black luck. This person was completely the carrier of all the unlucky things in the world. It was actually similar to the supreme evil path of the Heavenly Bull clan. What a talent! Niu Manshan's gaze finally landed on Zhu'er. Then, his eyes widened in surprise. He had discovered something. A pig with an extremely high talent in illusions. However, this was not the main point that surprised him. What surprised him was that the depths of this pig's Tao heart were actually filled with the stains of humanity and the fall of morality. Gluttony, lust, greed, rage, sloth, pessimism, conceit, fear of death, shamelessness, cheap mouth, ugliness, selfishness. He had never seen anyone's Tao heart that could be cultivated to such a negative and sinful realm. There were simply no advantages to be found on this pig, only countless flaws. However, with so many flaws, sometimes, it could become an unparalleled talent. Another talent. First question, are your parents still alive? Niu Manshan laughed and asked. They're long gone. I can't remember. Woof, woof, woof. Zhu'er picked his ears, Old Crow Ba picked his nose, and Crow Tengu chased his tail in circles. No one took Niu Manshan seriously. Very good. Second question, are you willing to be my son? Niu Manshan asked again. Not suitable. This is not suitable. This poor Taoist is destined to be evil. I can only be someone's father, but I can't recognize anyone as my father. Call me Grandpa Pig and this old pig will consider being your father. Woof woof woof. Without Ning Fan here, Old Crow Ba would not be the most loyal little eight and Zhu'er would not be the most obedient person. All of them were extremely arrogant. How dare you talk to me like that? Interesting. Third question, are you willing to die in battle for the Zido immortal domain? This question is very important. I only want to take in a foster son who destroys the world. I don't want to take in foster sons who protect the world. What kind of joke is this? You actually doubt my loyalty to the Zido immortal domain? You actually instigated me to destroy the world. Humph. Do you know that this poor Taoist is the strongest warrior in the world who is not afraid of death? What is so difficult about dying in battle for the Zido immortal domain? However, even if this poor Taoist dies heroically, it is not for the reward of my master but for my loyalty and hot-bloodedness. You don't understand. You can't see the world that this poor Taoist sees. Old Crow Ba tried his best to show off. He had imitated most of Taoist Musong's tone. Cut the crap. Call me Grandpa Pig and I will be your Daddy Pig. Zhu Er said impatiently. Woof woof woof. Crow Tiango turned his butt to Niu Manshan and farted. Then, he walked away disdainfully. He wanted to leave. But how could it be so easy? Ha! None of you are actually loyal to the Zido immortal domain. I find all of you very pleasing to the eye. None of you are good people. All of you are talented. I am very satisfied. Ha ha ha. Boom in the room, Niu Manshan released his aura force of an ancient great cultivator without holding back. It pressed old Crow Ba, Crow Tiango, and Zhu Er to the ground. They were so shocked that they could not speak. Old Crow Ba was terrified. Zhu Er was terrified. Crow Tiango was terrified. When they thought of what they did and said to Niu Manshan just now, they wished that they could go back in time and ask him again. Be my son. And so, the three cowards obediently acknowledged him as their godfather. They acknowledged him for 10 years, moreover, they were willing to accept it as if it was syrup. Chapter 1162. 10 years was just too short for cultivators. The Battle of the Realm River was still a hot topic in the entire Eastern Heaven. During these 10 years, Ning Fan had consumed a large amount of cuttlefish dumplings. His qi and blood had increased by more than a few times. The amount of qi and blood he had was not much weaker than some quasi-saints. Of course, it was still incomparable to monsters like Black Rope who had vigorous life force, let alone blood god Gung Wu. Zhang Yu's qi and blood had also increased tremendously. The strength of her qi and blood had already surpassed the range of a first-level quasi-saint. It was comparable to a second-level quasi-saint. The increase in his qi and blood naturally had a significant boost to Ning Fan's strength. However, the depletion of the spirit recovering rice had caused his combat strength to decline, making it difficult for him to fight beyond his usual level. During the battle against blood god Gung Wu, Ning Fan had consumed all the remaining spirit recovering rice. Without it, he could not activate the cross-shaped halo indefinitely. Fortunately, Ning Fan's current cultivation base was completely different from before the Battle of the Realm River. Now, with the strength of his mental strength at his peak, he could continuously activate the cross-shaped halo for around 1 hour. It was much better than the 415 breaths he used in the past. 1 hour of the cross-shaped halo was enough for him to finish off most of his half-step saint opponents. Of course, it was far from enough to deal with a first-level quasi-saint. When facing a half-step saint, he could protect himself but not win. When facing a half-step saint, he was already invincible. This was Ning Fan's current strength. After 10 years, Zhang Yu's injuries had finally healed. On a certain day, Ning Fan also quietly left the slaughter palace. Niu Manshan also left the slaughter palace. He had been cooking cuttlefish dumplings for Ning Fan for 10 years and also taught his 3 foster sons for 10 years. It was time for him to go out and have a good time. He had been cooped up at the bottom of the river for too long. He wanted to spend some time touring the vast starry skies of Eastern Heaven, searching for food ingredients and having a good time. Sigh. I have taught you for 10 years. How much of the essence of the heavenly bull's skin marks you can comprehend will all depend on your luck. Little 8, Little Air and Little Crow, remember to work hard and take the responsibility of revitalizing the heavenly bull clan. Don't slack off. Niu Manshan was about to leave the slaughter palace. The only people he could not let go of were Old Wu, Zhu Er, and Heavenly Crow Dog. In the past 10 years, the 2 people and the dog had been quite filial to him. Therefore, Niu Manshan still had some feelings for them. This was also the reason why Ning Fan purposely let Old Wu and the others call Niu Manshan their father. Since Niu Manshan had his foster son by Ning Fan's side, he was even less worried that Niu Manshan would destroy the world for no reason. Father. Take care. Dad, be careful on your way home. Come home early. Woof woof woof. Tears and snot flowed down the faces of the man and the 2 dogs. Their true feelings were revealed, which made Niu Manshan even more moved. It felt great to have a son. He, Niu Manshan, was no longer alone in this world. The Heavenly Bull tribe still has 4 members, ha ha ha. Sigh. It's a pity that you insist on not letting me get rid of the restriction on your enslavement. Otherwise, I won't let my Heavenly Bull clan continue to be that Ning Fan's slaves no matter what. Speaking up to this point, Niu Manshan was somewhat resentful that they didn't meet his expectations, and he angrily glared at Old Wu and the others. A slave for a day, a slave for life. Little 8 has promised to serve Master Ning Fan for the rest of his life. The promise is still there. How can I abandon my master? Please forgive me, father. Little Pig has disappointed father. Woof woof woof. Niu Manshan was touched by the loyalty of Old Wu and the others. Even though he did not like fools who spoke of justice every day, he also hoped that his 3 foster sons would know how to be grateful and would not betray him or the Heavenly Bull clan. In Niu Manshan's opinion, his 3 foster sons were not even willing to betray their master, so how could they betray their father? They were all good children. Even though he was angry that they were unwilling to regain their freedom, he was also touched by their pure hearts. Good. Good. Since it's your decision, I won't force you. I'm leaving now. The 3 of you must remember not to spread the secret technique of the Heavenly Bull clan. After reminding them again, Niu Manshan flew away from the slaughter palace with a gratified expression. As soon as Niu Manshan left, the expressions of Old Wu and the others instantly changed. The speed at which their expressions changed was faster than flipping a page of a book. It turned out that their expressions towards Niu Manshan's father were all fake. Hee hee. They actually want me to betray the fiend. Even though you are an ancient great cultivator, the fiend's achievements in the future will definitely surpass them. If you betray the fiend now, what will you do when he becomes stronger than you in the future? Moreover, you have no idea how many benefits you can obtain by following the fiend. What you don't know is that when the fiend took the initiative to set me free in the past, I didn't agree to it. The world laughed at me for being too crazy. I laughed at them for not being able to see through me. Old Wu laughed strangely. Brother Wu, you're right. Being Old Devil Ning's servant is not only not a humiliation but also an honor and an opportunity. Old Devil Ning is cold on the outside but warm on the inside. As long as we serve him wholeheartedly, the benefits we will obtain in the future will definitely be greater than following any master. Only fools want to be free. Zhu Er deeply agreed. Woof woof woof. Niu Manshan was destined not to understand the real thoughts of Old Wu and the others. It was not that Niu Manshan was simple and honest. It was just that Old Wu and the others were too good at disguising their true feelings. Somewhere in the starry sky, Ning Fan suddenly sensed something and turned to look at the direction behind him. His Yun Yan sensed that Niu Manshan had already left the slaughter palace. Moreover, Yun Yan even transmitted the conversation between Niu Manshan and the others to his ears. I'm leaving now. The 3 of you must remember not to spread the secret technique of the Heavenly Bull clan. That was Niu Manshan's instruction before he left. Unfortunately, it seemed like it was just his wishful thinking. Ning Fan patted his storage pouch and took out 3 ancient cowhide scrolls. They were given to him by Old Wu, Zhu Er, and Heavenly Crow Dog respectively. When the 3 of them had just obtained the secret technique of the Heavenly Bull clan, they had already fought to give it to Ning Fan. The spatial scroll of Heavenly Bull's skin patterns was obtained from Old Wu. The hidden armor scroll of Heavenly Bull's skin patterns was obtained from Heavenly Crow Dog. The spirit scroll of Heavenly Bull's skin patterns was obtained from Zhu Er. According to the scroll, there were 12 types of Heavenly Bull skin patterns in the beginning. Half of them were lost in the river of time. As for the remaining 6 types of skin patterns, Niu Manshan had yet to master them all. The Heavenly Bull skin patterns were broad and profound. It was too difficult to master all of them. Niu Manshan was worried that his 3 adopted sons would bite off more than they could chew. Therefore, he only gave each of them a skin pattern cultivation method that was most suitable for them. Unexpectedly, these 3 skin pattern cultivation methods all benefited Ning Fan in the end. Spatial skin patterns, hidden armor skin patterns, spirit skin patterns. Among them, the spatial skin patterns is the most difficult to comprehend. Now, I can't even understand the surface of it. The hidden armor skin patterns requires the most expensive materials. The spirit skin patterns is the easiest to master. I only need to meditate to cultivate it without the help of external objects. I don't have the heavenly bull bloodline in my body. I need to choose one of them to cultivate the heavenly bull bloodline. 10 years ago, I chose the spirit scroll. Unfortunately, after 10 years, I am still a little bit away from truly cultivating the heavenly bull bloodline. It's really difficult to get something from nothing. Ning Fan sighed and kept the 3 types of scrolls. Under the activation of his demon spirit power, a heavenly bull star that was about to condense appeared in the demon stars in his left eye. As he withdrew his demon spirit power, the demon stars in his left eye disappeared one after another. I must go to the northern heaven. The situation there worries me. However, it's definitely not easy to go to the northern heaven. The only method I can use is the ancient devil cavity. However, the orthodox ancient devil cavity is too difficult to cultivate. The devil cavity is divided into 3 grades, low grade, mid grade and high grade. The low grade devil cavity can allow one to travel across all medium-sized worlds. The mid grade devil cavity can allow one to travel across all boundless worlds. The high grade devil cavity can allow one to travel across samsara. The low-grade devil cavity requires the cultivator to be an ancient devil who possesses at least 1 drop of ancestral blood. At the same time, the spatial power must be cultivated to the critical point of the sovereign realm. The grade of Ning Fan's devil blood had met the requirements. The only thing that he could not achieve was his comprehension of the spatial power. At the very least, he needed to reach the critical point of the sovereign realm of space. This requirement was too high. If Ning Fan really had the aptitude to cultivate the spatial power, why would he need to cultivate the devil cavity? He would be able to travel freely in the 4 heavens and 9 worlds. It was impossible for him to cultivate the orthodox devil cavity for the time being. Thus, Ning Fan could only settle for the next best thing and come up with another plan. He planned to create a pseudo-devil cavity which had a lower requirement for cultivation and sneak into the northern heaven first. Ning Fan had the Tao comprehension of the 2nd level of the heavenly being realm. In addition, he had the cultivation method of the orthodox devil cavity. It was not impossible for him to create a pseudo-devil cavity ability based on the orthodox devil cavity. However, the process was certainly not easy. During the past 10 years, other than eating dumplings, cultivating the longhorn beetle's spiritual skin marks and having sex at night, Ning Fan basically spent the rest of his time studying the pseudo-devil cavity. Up until now, he had only reached 1/10 of the progress of the pseudo-devil cavity and he had already encountered a problem that he could not overcome. It gave Ning Fan a headache. It was also the reason why he left the slaughter palace. Ning Fan took out the treasure-searching compass. He did not know what it was searching for. Then, light spots appeared on the compass one after another. The light spot that was closest to him was located on the Dragon Transformation Star. The Dragon Transformation Star was not called the Dragon Transformation Star in the first place. 5 million years ago, the Dragon Transformation Star was just an abandoned star. Until one day, a person with the Tao title of Venerated Dragon came to this abandoned star. He used his great ability to open up a spirit vein on this star and moved his sect. From then on, this star was named after Dragon Transformation. Ning Fan did not expect that the first thing he was looking for would be on this Dragon Transformation Star. Speaking of which, the previous owner of this star was Venerated Dragon. He was one of Ning Fan's generals when he first entered the Realm River. Unfortunately, that was all in the past. The current owner of this star was no longer Venerated Dragon because he had already died in battle. I have a presumptuous request. I hope you can agree to it, Vice General. If I die in the Realm River like fellow Taoist Shy Flower, I hope that you can bring my natal magic treasure back to the Eastern Heaven and give it to my descendants. Alright. I also have a request. If I die, I hope that you can pass this letter to my younger brother. Just tell him that I won't be attending the Immortal Sex Flower Gathering next year. Alright. The memories of the past resurfaced before Ning Fan's eyes, making him sigh softly. Venerated Dragon had died in battle. As for the natal magic treasure of Venerated Dragon, Ning Fan had already sent it back to the Dragon Transformation Star the moment he returned to the Eastern Heaven and handed it over to the descendants of Venerated Dragon. Since he happened to pass by this star, Ning Fan did not mind spreading his spirit sense to see if the descendants of Venerated Dragon were living well. Ning Fan's eyes flashed with coldness when he saw them. He withdrew his spirit sense and descended towards the Dragon Transformation Star. At this moment, a small-scale auction was being held in the Dragon Transformation sect. The finale item of this auction was none other than the natal magic treasure of Venerated Dragon, the Yellow Dragon Rope. It was a 12 Nirvana rebirth magic treasure. It was a protective item that Venerated Dragon left behind for his descendants before he died. It was also the only relic he left behind for them. One should know that when Venerated Dragon died in battle, he did not even manage to retrieve his corpse in one piece, but at this moment, this relic had appeared in the auction so blatantly, the descendants of Venerated Dragon actually auctioned off the only relic of their ancestor. Since this relic belonged to the descendants of Venerated Dragon, Ning Fan would not care about how they would deal with it. However, what angered him was not this matter but something else. 351 billion Dao crystals. Is there no one else who wants to increase the price? The ones who hosted the auction were the 3 disciples of Venerated Dragon. All of them had void-shedding cultivation realm. As for the direct descendants of Venerated Dragon, they were seated below the auction hall. It was a tanned and skinny young man. His cultivation base was merely at the Dujin realm. He could only watch his 3 uncles auction off the relic of their ancestor with a trace of hatred hidden deep in his eyes. How could he not hate them? In order to protect the Eastern Heaven, Venerated Dragon brought all the experts of his direct family to the Realm River. In the end, all of them died in battle. Among the remaining direct family members, his cultivation base was the highest. However, how could a mere Dujin realm guard such a precious item like a 12 Nirvana rebirth magic treasure? In the end, the relic was forcefully taken away by his 3 uncles who colluded with outsiders. Then, they held this auction. Not only did the Yellow Dragon Rope change owners, but even the Dragon Transformation sect no longer belonged to the descendants of Venerated Dragon, 352 billion. Someone made a new bid. 354 billion. 361 billion. 380, a venerated immortal old monster raised his plate and was about to make a bid. However, before he could finish his bid, a gust of wind suddenly swept through the entire auction hall. Subsequently, the plate in the venerated immortal old monster's hand shattered into dust without any warning. Who is it? How dare you behave atrociously in my Dragon Transformation sect's auction? Before that venerated immortal old monster could make a bid, his plate was destroyed. He lost a lot of face and was about to explode in anger. However, before he could say anything, the 3 Dragon Transformation sect venerated elders who were hosting the auction already spoke with cold expressions. The 3 of them could not help but be angry. What kind of place was this? This was the Dragon Transformation sect, the territory of Venerated Dragon. Although Venerated Dragon had died in battle, the Dragon Transformation sect's sect protecting array was still there. Ordinary venerated immortals would not dare to be impudent in the Dragon Transformation sect. The person who came was too daring. He actually dared to smash the Dragon Transformation sect's place. Did he not want to live anymore? Humph. A cold snort carried an unimaginable magic power aura force, sending the 3 Shikong venerated elders flying away while coughing out blood. While they were flying away, their physical bodies were continuously collapsing. They could not even withstand a cold snort from the person who came. Everyone's faces turned pale with fright when they saw the terrifying strength of the person who came. The venerated immortal old monster who did not have the time to get angry was now sweating profusely. He was secretly relieved. In his knowledge, even an immortal Emperor realm expert might not be able to shatter the physical bodies of Shikong venerated elders with a cold snort. However, the person who came was able to do it. That person was at least an immortal emperor realm expert or even stronger. This person was definitely not someone he could afford to offend. Fortunately, he did not get into trouble because of his words. He was really too lucky. Who can give me an explanation? Why is fellow Daoist Hua Long's relic being auctioned? Without any warning, a storm suddenly fell on the entire dragon transformation sect. Cold killing intent spread across the entire sect. Under the horrified gazes of most of the old monsters, Ning Fan, who was dressed in white robes, walked into the auction house with a cold expression. Not everyone could recognize Ning Fan's appearance. However, after the battle at the border river, most of the cultivators in the Eastern Heaven roughly knew Ning Fan's appearance. As such, when the cultivators at the scene realized that the person who came was actually Ning Fan, some of them cheered while some of them were terrified. Those who cheered were the heroes who had witnessed the battle at the border river with their own eyes. Those who were terrified thought that there was something wrong with them. The physical bodies of 3 Shikong venerated elders of the Dragon Transformation sect were destroyed by Ning Fan's cold snort. Now, only their primordial spirits were left, and they were lucky enough to survive. Of course, Ning Fan had shown them mercy and wanted to keep them alive for questioning. The faces of their primordial spirits were almost distorted due to extreme fear. They knew that Ning Fan was the one who sent someone to deliver the relic of venerated elder Hua Long back to them. However, they did not know that Ning Fan was actually concerned about venerated elder Hua Long's funeral to such an extent that he would personally attend such an inconspicuous auction. Kill. 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 Lord kill. This lowly one has eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Please forgive this lowly one for speaking rudely. Since Ning Fan could even kill Xueshen Wu, it was as easy as flipping his palm for him to kill 3 Shikong venerated elders. How could they not be afraid? Suddenly, a second tribulation immortal venerated elder flew towards the auction venue with fear written all over his face. Since you're so eager to escape, it seems like this matter is related to you as well. Get back here. Heavenly cow skin marks, space marks. Ning Fan pressed his hand down. That second tribulation immortal venerated elder who had already escaped from the dragon transformation star was directly caught by Ning Fan across the space and thrown to the ground. Even though he had yet to cultivate the space marks, it was enough to deal with a second tribulation immortal venerated elder. This divine ability shocked countless people. A dignified second tribulation immortal venerated elder actually could not even escape from Ning Fan. It was just too frightening. Why do you want to escape? Ning Fan was too lazy to look at the 3 Shikong venerated elders. His cold eyes directly swept across that second tribulation immortal venerated elder. His baleful chi was too terrifying. It was the kind of baleful chi that only a person who had slaughtered hundreds of immortal emperors would possess. It was so terrifying that the second tribulation immortal venerated elder who was being stared at directly fell to the ground with his teeth chattering. Due to extreme fear, he could no longer use any of his magic power. This lowly one deserves to die. Please spare my life, Lord Killing Hall. That second tribulation immortal venerated elder finally gritted his teeth and begged for mercy. Senior Ning, you can't spare this person. Another voice sounded. It was a dark-skinned and skinny young man. He was the descendant of the Dragon Transformation sect. The descendant of fellow Daoist Hua Long, huh? Alright. Come and answer my doubts. What exactly happened to the Dragon Transformation sect? Yes. The descendant of the Dragon Transformation sect told him everything that happened. After venerated Hua Long died, the Dragon Transformation sect no longer had an immortal venerated elder. Even his broken sense was gone. However, the cultivation resources in the sect's treasure vault were still there. In the eyes of some old monsters of the eastern sky, the current Dragon Transformation sect was like a naked beauty that they could do whatever they wanted with it. A few immortal venerated elders of the 10,000 ancient era had their eyes on the Dragon Transformation sect. After a series of battles in the dark, venerated Cold Mountain, who was at the second tribulation realm of the 10,000 ancient era, became the new master of the dragon transformation sect. The three Shekongkong disciples that venerated dragon transformation sect left behind in the sect immediately submitted to venerated Cold Mountain. Relying on venerated Cold Mountain's influence, they bullied the few remaining descendants of venerated dragon transformation sect. Even the only relic of venerated dragon transformation sect was snatched and auctioned off. If it wasn't because Ning Fan happened to need to go to the dragon transformation star to look for something, he would certainly not know that the descendants of venerated dragon transformation sect had actually become lambs that were bullied by everyone. The martyrs died for the sake of protecting the eastern sky. Their deaths were not worth it. It was fine if those cowards who did not participate in the battle did not treat the descendants of the martyrs well. However, they actually bullied the orphans of the martyrs. How could Ning Fan not be angry at such a situation? How could he not be disappointed? All of a sudden, Ning Fan really wanted to know what kind of situation the descendants of the martyrs who died for the eastern sky were in. Let me ask you. Have you ever participated in the Border River meeting? Ning Fan coldly questioned venerated Cold Mountain, who was kneeling on the ground. And no. Venerated Cold Mountain was drenched in cold sweat. Venerated dragon transformation sect died for the eastern sky. Are you indebted to him? Why yes, I am indebted to him. However, the weak are prey to the strong in the cultivation world. It has always been. Venerated Cold Mountain wanted to refute him. Unfortunately, Ning Fan did not want to listen to him at all. He knew that it was common sense in the cultivation world that the strong survive and the weak die. However, there was something more important than common sense. Since venerated Cold Mountain did not understand it, Ning Fan did not expect him to understand it either. Today, he wanted to use venerated Cold Mountain as a warning to let the entire eastern sky know the consequences of bullying the orphans of the martyrs. I will give you 10 breaths of time. Run. Ning Fan said mercilessly. What? Venerated Cold Mountain's expression changed. He instantly understood what Ning Fan meant. Ning Fan wanted to kill him. I refuse to accept it. I refuse to accept it. However, so what if I refuse to accept it? Can I defeat Ning Fan? In the cultivation world, all the principles were ultimately decided by one's fist. If you don't have the corresponding strength, who would care whether it was fair or not? One breath. Damn it. The timer has actually started. Chi venerated Cold Mountain made up his mind. He bit off his entire tongue and used the pain to stimulate his nerves, temporarily freeing his body from fear and allowing him to move again. Then, he tried his best to escape from the auction house. He ran with all his might. He coughed out his blood essence time and time again, using the blood escape art to travel across the starry sky. He was filled with regret. He regretted that he was greedy and plotted against the dragon transformation sect. However, it was already too late. 2 breaths. 4 breaths. 8 breaths. 10 breaths. Even though venerated Cold Mountain had already escaped far away, Ning Fan still sucked him back to his side in an instant. With just a press of his finger, Ning Fan crushed his physical body and killed his primordial spirit. How domineering! How domineering! Everyone became quiet. Some of them were afraid while some of them were ashamed. You 3 disciples who betrayed your master. How do you want to die? Ning Fan's eyes then swept across the primordial spirits of the 3 Shikong old monsters. With his intelligence, he easily found out the identity of the 3 people and their actions from the hearts of some of the female cultivators here. The 3 of them were the beloved disciples of venerated dragon transformation sect. He had once entrusted them with deep trust. If it wasn't because of his trust, why would venerated dragon transformation sect leave these 3 disciples to guard the sect and protect his descendants? However, the 3 of them had failed to live up to his master's expectations. They actually worked together with outsiders to murder his descendants. Given Ning Fan's extreme character, he would never forgive such disciples who betrayed their masters and destroyed their ancestors. The three of them were also deeply aware of this. Feeling horrified, they immediately ran for their lives. However, even immortal venerated dragon transformation sect could not escape. How could the three of them escape? As Ning Fan pointed at the void space 3 times, the 3 Shikong old monsters shrieked and died. They could not even get out of the auction house. Thank you, Senior, for avenging me. When the descendant of venerated dragon transformation sect saw that all his enemies were dead, he shed tears of gratitude towards Ning Fan. He knelt on the ground in excitement and kept kowtowing to Ning Fan. Ning Fan shook his head and used his sleeve to help the descendant up. Then, he tossed a storage pouch to him and left the auction house. Farewell, Lord of the Killing Palace. Countless cultivators were impressed by Ning Fan's might and stood up to send him off. However, Ning Fan did not actually leave the dragon transformation planet. In a flash, he flew to the highest mountain on the planet. He was not in a hurry to take something from the planet. Instead, he remained silent. It was autumn on the dragon transformation planet. Without any warning, a bone-chilling autumn rain fell on the planet. Ning Fan stood in the autumn rain and looked at the boundless curtain of rain. It was as if he could see the figures of countless cultivators of the eastern heaven fighting to their deaths in the world river. At the same time, it was as if he could see the heroic figures of countless cultivators of the Zi-Do immortal realm who died protecting the Zi-Do immortal domain. Is this the world that you all want to protect? Is this the world that immortal sovereign Zi-Do wants to change? Chapter 1163. Ning Fan looked at the torrential autumn rain, the flashes of lightning in the sky and the depths of the nebula. The chi that venerated dragon transformation realm left behind on this planet in the past was washed into the soil by the rain and seeped into the earth. It was annihilated in the samsara and dispersed bit by bit. That rain was formed by Ning Fan's ability. It was as if Ning Fan was purposely holding a funeral in the rain for venerated dragon transformation realm to send him off to a faraway place. After a long time, Ning Fan finally snapped out of his thoughts. The rain had stopped and his mind became calm again, as if the previous question had never happened. It's time to collect the spatial secret technique on the dragon transformation star. I used the treasure searching compass to search the spatial secret techniques and secret treasures in the entire eastern heaven. I found a total of 1,000 light spots. Among them, there are only 6 that are the brightest. Only these 6 items are compatible with the ancient devils and can provide great help to me in developing the false devil cavity. Ning Fan muttered to himself and looked at the mountains in the distance. It was the highest mountain on the dragon transformation star. Looking from afar, the mountain looked like a sleeping dragon that was lying dormant on the ground. Ning Fan's eyes were glowing with green light. His clear eyes seemed to be able to see through all the secrets hidden among the mountains. He slowly moved his feet and walked along the mountain path to the edge of the cliff. Just as he was about to reach the edge of the cliff, he suddenly leaped off the cliff. Ning Fan's body fell down the cliff. To an immortal king realm cultivator, falling from such a height was not dangerous at all. The mountain breeze after the rain carried a hint of coldness, whistling in Ning-er's ears. Ning Fan quickly calculated the distance of his fall. When he reached a certain height in mid-air, he suddenly moved his 10 fingers and made hundreds of hand seals in an instant. Using hundreds of hand seals to activate a divine ability could greatly increase the power of the divine ability. What Ning Fan used was the Heavenly Bull Space Skin Mark which he had just mastered. As soon as he activated the divine ability, strange patterns instantly appeared on his palm, the back of his palm and even his entire right arm. They looked like tattoos on his skin. At the moment when these tattoo-like heavenly bull skin marks appeared, Ning Fan made a tearing motion with his right hand and tore open a small spatial door which emitted demonic light in midair. There was actually such a small spatial door hidden on this star. Even the previous master of the dragon planet, the venerable dragon, did not know about this. If the treasure-searching compass did not show this information, it would be very difficult for Ning Fan to find out what kind of secret places existed on this planet even with his current eyesight. At the moment when he tore open the small spatial door, Ning Fan entered it in a flash. At first, his vision was filled with darkness. When he passed through a narrow spatial passage, the scenery in front of him suddenly became clear and bright. This was a secret place hidden on the dragon transformation star. Inside the secret place, there was a whole group of ancient tombs. Countless ancient tombs were located here, and no one knew who was buried here. In each of the 4 directions of the tombs, there was a burial peak that towered into the sky. It was as if they were mausoleum guardians that stood tall since the beginning of time. Who dares to enter the place where the sky dragon god rests? Crack, crack, crack. All of a sudden, the rocks on the 4 burial peaks peeled off and turned into 4 mountain puppets. They stood up from the ground and revealed their killing intent at Ning Fan. Each of the 4 mountain puppets had the cultivation base of an immortal king realm expert. It was not hard to imagine that the sky dragon god that was buried in this group of tombs was not an ordinary being. It was highly likely that he was an immortal emperor realm expert when he was alive or even higher. I know about the sky dragon god. It seems to be a branch of the true dragon clan. As for the sky dragon god, it is my first time hearing about it. The word god seems to refer to the clan. In the largest tomb of this place, I sensed the chi of a decaying ancient god which carried the chi of a true dragon. Could it be that the sky dragon god that is sleeping here is an expert of the demon race who abandoned the ancient demons and cultivated the ancient gods? Ancient demons who cultivated the divine Tao were divine beasts. Ning Fan had met some divine beasts who abandoned the ancient demons and cultivated the ancient gods in the past by chance. That was why he had such a speculation which was getting closer to the truth. The sky dragon god that was sleeping was already dead without any remains left. To Ning Fan, who had intruded the space of the tomb, this dead person posed no threat at all. The only ones who intended to stop him were the 4 mountain puppets. They were just 4 immortal kings. Ning Fan would not put them in his eyes at all. However, he could not figure out if the sky dragon god that was buried here was a heroic member of the Zi-Do immortal domain. If this person had died in battle while protecting the Zi-Do immortal domain, it was already disrespectful for Ning Fan to intrude the tomb without permission. Stealing his secret technique was even more disrespectful. If he killed his tomb-guarding puppets, he would really be a disgrace to the Zi-Do immortal domain. Out of this consideration, Ning Fan showed a rare courtesy to the 4 immortal king realm puppets. I didn't come here with the intention to disturb the slumber of the senior of the Heavenly Dragon clan. I just want to borrow one of your relics to take a look. I definitely don't have any ill intentions. I hope the 4 seniors can make an exception for me. Rumble. The response to Ning Fan's request was a rude attack from the 4 puppets. The spiritual intelligence of the 4 puppets was too low. They only knew to carry out the order to guard the tomb. They would not allow Ning Fan to steal the treasures here at all. As soon as they activated their abilities, countless mountain rocks and secret techniques were launched at Ning Fan, who was at the center of the tomb from 4 directions. Conversation is ineffective, huh? If that's the case, I'm sorry. Ning Fan first activated the Morning Death technique. The Morning Death technique was known as the secret technique that could restrain puppets the most in the world. Although the Morning Death technique that Ning Fan obtained in the past was just an incomplete copy, it could not control high-grade spiritual puppets. However, in recent years, Ning Fan would occasionally find some time to improve this technique. He really wanted to know if his improved Morning Death technique could control the Immortal King-grade spiritual puppets. If it could, Ning Fan was disappointed very quickly. After he activated the improved Morning Death technique, the 4 Immortal King-grade spiritual puppets were controlled by the technique for a short moment. A black moon mark appeared on their glabella. That was the proof that they were being controlled by Ning Fan by force. Unfortunately, the improved Morning Death technique could only control the 4 Immortal King-grade spiritual puppets for a moment before they broke free. As a matter of fact, even though Ning Fan had improved the Morning Death technique, it still could not be used against high-grade spiritual puppets. As such, Ning Fan had no choice but to use the Heaven Sealing technique violently to freeze the 4 Immortal King-grade spiritual puppets on the spot. With his 13,500 tribulations worth of magic power, he would be able to freeze the 4 Immortal King-grade spiritual puppets for at least a few hours. No matter how hard the four immortal king-grade spiritual puppets struggled, they could not break free from the immobilization. They were extremely shocked. Their spiritual intelligence was too low. It was difficult for them to understand what was happening in front of them. Ning Fan clearly looked like an immortal king. Why was he able to restrain the four immortal king-grade spiritual puppets with a single move? This was something that even ancient immortal kings could not achieve. Without the interference of the immortal king-grade spiritual puppets, Ning Fan landed at the center of the group of tombs. The layout of this tomb was the layout of stars surrounding the moon. The center of the layout was the resting place of the unknown sky dragon god. Ning Fan did not immediately disturb the slumber of this senior. He first took out some incense offerings and offered his prayers. Then, he used his vast magic power to tear open the restriction on the entrance of the tomb and entered the underground palace of the tomb in a flash. After a long time, Ning Fan walked out of the underground palace of the tomb. He also brought out an ancient dragon scale. It was an inherited dragon scale of the Sky Dragon clan. Within the dragon scale, there was a spatial secret technique called Heavenly Book of Teleportation. Most of the great experts of the Sky Dragon clan were proficient in the power of space. Those who were talented could even use the power of space to materialize a Heavenly Book of Space. As long as the spatial coordinates of every place in the world were collected into the book, one could directly teleport to that place by flipping to the page of the book when they need to use it. Without a doubt, this technique was an extremely profound spatial teleportation technique. The principle behind its teleportation was much more profound than most of the interdomain teleportation formations. Of course, compared to the ancient devil cavity, this technique was still far inferior. The process of collecting the spatial coordinates was already extremely complicated. It would take a lot of time to complete. It was far less practical and convenient than the ancient devil cavity. Moreover, this technique had a huge side effect. Every time the Sky Dragon clan uses the Heavenly Book of Space to teleport, they would need to consume millions of years of their immortal lifespan. It could be said that this technique directly used the lifespan of a cultivator to teleport to another place. The price to pay was not small. If Ning Fan wanted to teleport to the northern heaven using the spatial secret technique of the Heavenly Book of Space, there were many prerequisites that he could not fulfill. Thus, it was obviously impractical. Ning Fan did not plan to master this technique. He only planned to master its preliminary stage. His goal was to use the profound principles of space in this technique to develop his own pseudo-devil cavity. He did not attach much importance to the Heavenly Book of Space itself. Sorry for offending you, Ning Fan released the four immortal king puppets and apologized to them. Then, he left this place in a flash and sealed the small door of this space again. This man is so strong. Even though the four mountain puppets had low spiritual intelligence, they were still shocked by Ning Fan's vast magic power. After staying silent for a long time, they finally recovered from their fear and helplessly turned back into four burial mountains and fell into a deep slumber again. Ning Fan left the dragon transformation star and randomly found an abandoned star to go into seclusion. A few months later, a massive spatial storm suddenly erupted on this abandoned star, directly turning it into dust. Ning Fan's body was covered in blood. When he escaped from the spatial storm, he was inwardly shocked by how dangerous it was to cultivate the Heavenly Book of Space teleportation. He had just made a small mistake during the cultivation process and he was almost severely injured by the backlash of this technique. The secret technique of space was indeed one of the most difficult and dangerous types of abilities to cultivate in this world. Ning Fan had no choice but to go to another abandoned star and enter seclusion to cultivate. Half a year later, this abandoned star exploded again because of Ning Fan's mistake. After that, Ning Fan found the third abandoned star. A few more months later, the star exploded, then, it was the fourth, the fifth and the sixth cultivation star. Time flashed. 11 years had passed. After sacrificing more than 20 cultivation stars, Ning Fan finally succeeded in cultivating the Heavenly Book of Space teleportation. After spending another 6 years to integrate the profound principles of the heavenly book of space teleportation into his pseudo-devil cavity, the progress of the pseudo-devil cavity's development had reached 30%. Ning Fan's innate talent and divine abilities was undeniable, as he was able to develop the pseudo-devil cavity to 30% in just 17 years. If those ancient devils who had lived since ancient times knew that Ning Fan could develop the pseudo-devil cavity at such a fast speed without the help of the Ren school, their jaws would definitely drop to the ground. However, Ning Fan was still not satisfied with his progress. After 17 years, he had only developed it from 10% to 30%. It was too slow. He was a cultivator at the second level of the heavenly being realm. Why was it so difficult for him to develop a pseudo-devil cavity instead of the original one? 17 years had passed. How many people would die in the northern heaven where the chaos in the realm river was the most severe? Would his woman also become one of the many victims? I must speed up my progress. There are still 6 more spatial secret techniques and secret treasures that I can take. Ning Fan took out the treasure-searching compass. After searching for a while, he confirmed a new direction. Then, he took a step forward and vanished without a trace. It was different from the escaping technique he used in the past. The escaping technique he was using now carried a trace of spatial power, which increased his flying speed by a few times. It could be said that Ning Fan's current speed was already at the peak among the first-level quasi-saints. There were very, very few first-level quasi-saints who could match his speed. A few days later, Ning Fan appeared in the Scarlet Rainbow Starry Sea. The Scarlet Rainbow Starry Sea was a famous forbidden place for true immortals in Eastern Heaven. Every year, many second-step true immortals would come to this place to train and search for treasures. However, only a few of them could truly enter the depths of the Starry Sea. Even the ancient monsters would face great danger if they enter the depths of the Starry Sea rashly. Ning Fan, of course, was not afraid of the dangers of this place. His second target was at the deepest part of the Scarlet Rainbow Starry Sea. The reason he came to this place was for a ray of rainbow. It was not an ordinary rainbow but a ray of the Great Thousand Rainbow that would only be born in the depths of the Starry Sea every 8 million years. According to Ning Fan's deduction, it would take another 4,400,000 years for the next ray of the Great Thousand Rainbow to be born in this Starry Sea. Of course, it was impossible for Ning Fan to wait in this Starry Sea for 4,400,000 years. If he waited for that long, it would be too late by the time he reaches the northern heaven. Through the trading formation of the ancient country, Ning Fan purchased a secret technique that could nurture and mature the Great Thousand Rainbow from the heaven-reaching sect. With the help of this secret technique, he would only need to work hard in this Starry Sea for 20 years at most and he would be able to obtain a ray of the Great Thousand Rainbow. If I can obtain this item, my false devil cavity will possess a trace of the Great Thousand attribute. It will then be extremely easy for me to travel across a medium-sized world. What's troublesome is that even if I have the help of this secret technique, I will still have to continuously perform the technique in this Starry Sea for around 20 years. Ning Fan was eager to get to the northern heaven. Thus, he would feel heartache if he wasted even a second, let alone wasting 20 years. To cultivators, 20 years was a very short period of time. However, it carried a profound meaning to the war in the northern heaven. Compared to 20 years, the various ancient ferocious beasts that were guarding the Great Thousand Rainbow Starry Sea were not that troublesome. Even if there were a few half-saint realm ferocious beasts among the ferocious beasts that were guarding the rainbow, rumor has it that the ferocious beasts in the Scarlet Rainbow Starry Sea were formed from the evil thoughts of the ancient evil immortals after they died. Cultivators who enter the Starry Sea without permission will be hunted down by these ancient ferocious beasts regardless of their cultivation level. I'm afraid there will be a bloody battle on my way to the depths of the Starry Sea. Lei Ying, get ready to join the battle at any time. Miss Afro, I might need your help in the battle if it's necessary. Ning Fan transmitted his voice to the profound Yin world through the trace of connection between their minds. Big brother Ning, there is no need to be so courteous. You have saved my life before. Of course, I am willing to help you in this battle. Aphrodite's voice resounded in his mind, as if she was somewhat dissatisfied with Ning Fan's politeness towards her. After living in the profound Yin world for so many years, the frequency of her nightmares had obviously increased. Almost every few days, she would have a crazy dream of having sex with Ning Fan. Even though she had never done the deed between a man and a woman with Ning Fan, she felt that she had done it with him thousands of times. Moreover, Ning Fan had even saved her life. Under such circumstances, Ning Fan was still being so polite to her. Of course, she was not happy about it. She was very willing to fight for Ning Fan. "Master, don't worry. Under my training, Laying can join the battle at any time. As for Black Demon, he can also join the battle. Please approve, Master. Black Demon doesn't want to stay in a corner like trash. Black Demon wants to become Master's sharp blade to conquer the world." It wasn't the Tao Annihilation Thunder Infant's reply. Instead, it was Black Demon, who was in charge of training the Tao Annihilation Thunder Infant. His tone was somewhat aggrieved. She felt wronged because Ning Fan did not put her in an important position in recent years. "Why do you feel wronged?" "Fine. If there's a chance, I will let you join the battle together with me." Just as Ning Fan was comforting the disappointed little cat with his mind, his eyes suddenly flickered and he hid his body in the boundless void. At this moment, he had yet to enter the scarlet rainbow starry sea. He was still at the entrance of the starry sea. At this moment, a group of Eastern Heaven cultivators was flying over from the distant starry sky on a star boat. They landed at the entrance of the scarlet rainbow starry sea, which was not far from where Ning Fan was hiding. It was a group of cultivators who came to the scarlet rainbow starry sea for training. There were about 100 of them. Other than the cultivator who was leading the group, Old Monster Du Zhen, the rest of the cultivators were just at the first step of cultivation realm. Their cultivation bases were rather low. The weaker ones were only at the gold core realm or the nascent soul realm. They did not have the ability to survive in the starry sky at all. They could only hide under the defensive formation of the star boat and be extremely careful, fearing that they would be torn apart by the power of the starry sky. Does this person want to bring the juniors of his sect here to witness the ferocious might of the ancient ferocious beasts? If cultivators can witness the ferocious might of the ancient ferocious beasts when they are still at a low level, it will be extremely beneficial to the improvement of their courage and the sublimation of their Tao heart. However, aren't the disciples of this person a little too weak? Even though the benefits of coming to this place for training are not small, the chances of them dying are much higher. How many of these cultivators can return alive from the scarlet rainbow starry sea? Whether they live or die, it all depends on their luck. This is also the helplessness of the cultivation world. The weak will definitely be eliminated. Ning Fan sighed inwardly. Ning Fan did not want others to know his whereabouts. That was why he concealed himself to avoid the eyes and ears of this group of cultivators. The actions of others naturally had their own karma. Ning Fan did not intend to interfere recklessly. Just as he was about to enter the scarlet rainbow starry sea while concealing himself, he suddenly heard the laughter of two young girls coming from the small star boat. His footsteps paused slightly as he was surprised. Hee hee. I didn't expect that I would be able to follow my senior brothers and senior sisters of the Illusory Clouds sect to participate in the training right after I ascended. I'm sure that I will be able to broaden my horizons today. I'm really happy. I have never seen a true immortal senior in action before. The two young girls were actually cultivators who had just ascended from the lower world. However, Ning Fan did not know these two girls. They did not even come from the rain world. Instead, they came from another lower world. They also did not use the quota of the Godly Void Pavilion to ascend. Instead, they used the quota of the Illusory Clouds sect in the Eastern Heaven. Ning Fan remembered that the Illusory Clouds sect was an immortal venerate force in the Eastern Heaven. He did not expect that such a force would actually have the quota of ascension. That surprised him a little. However, Ning Fan also knew that the quota of ascension was not controlled by the super forces of the four heavens that were at the same level as the Godly Void Pavilion. Some sects of the four heavens with ancient inheritances also had the quota of ascension. However, Compared to the super forces like the godly void pavilion, the conditions for their ascension were much simpler. Accidents would often occur during the ascension, which directly caused 80 to 90% of the people who ascended to the four heavens to fall halfway. The failure rate of ascension was quite high. It could be said that these two young girls were very lucky to be able to successfully ascend to the eastern heaven with this kind of defective quota. However, they were also unlucky. It was because they were about to enter the Scarlet Rainbow Starry Sea for training. Unfortunately, the two girls who had just ascended to the eastern heaven obviously did not know about the dangers of the Scarlet Rainbow Starry Sea. They were still excited because they were about to witness a true immortal expert in action. But this kind of excitement was understandable. After all, how could the cultivators who lived in the lower worlds have the chance to witness a true immortal expert in action? To the cultivators who had just ascended to the eastern heaven, old monster Du Zhen was already a supreme existence. In the past, Ning Fan thought so. Now, the two young girls who had just ascended also thought the same. However, in reality, old monster Du Zhen was far from being the peak expert of the four heavens. Interesting. I didn't expect to encounter cultivators who have just ascended here. The bodies of these two girls do not have the chi of the rain world. Instead, it is more like the chi of the heaven immortal world or the earth immortal world. This is really rare. How long has it been since I last encountered cultivators who have ascended in the eastern heaven? Ning Fan, who was concealed secretly, spread out his spirit sense to investigate. Very quickly, he came to a conclusion and revealed a rare smile. There were too few cultivators who ascended to the eastern heaven from the lower worlds. Occasionally, there would be some. However, most of them would die easily in the chaotic battles and dangers of the eastern heaven because their cultivation levels were too weak. As a result, Ning Fan had very rarely encountered cultivators who had ascended to the eastern heaven until today. It was because most of the cultivators who had ascended died not long after they ascended. Only a few of them could stand firm in the four heavens. However, most of them were not outstanding figures. In the lower worlds, it seemed like it had been a long time since an ascended cultivator who could shake the four heavens was born. Ning Fan was just an exception among the exceptions. When he suddenly saw the two cultivators who had ascended to the four heavens, Ning Fan felt a sense of familiarity. It even evoked a trace of longing for his hometown. In fact, with the friendship between Ning Fan and the Godly Void Pavilion, it was as easy as flipping his hand to ask for a few ascension quotas from the Godly Void Pavilion to let his wives and concubines of the rain world ascend to the eastern heaven. However, he did not do so. Instead, he borrowed the power of the Godly Void Pavilion to send some letters to the rain world. Among them, there were some requests. He hoped that the women would not ascend but choose to wait patiently. They would meet again on the day he returns to the rain world. Compared to the rain world, the eastern heaven was too dangerous. Ning Fan was not willing to let all the women go to the most dangerous place. If possible, Ning Fan even wanted to let all the wives and concubines of the eastern heaven go to the rain world and live in a more peaceful place. As Ning Fan's cultivation level became higher, he wanted to put this idea into action. There was no path in the eastern heaven that could allow an immortal king realm old monster like him to return to the rain world. Thus, he could only put the plan in his mind aside for the time being. If there is a day when he returns to the rain world, the first thing he would do would be to open up the passage between the rain world and the upper world with his current supreme cultivation level and various heaven-defying methods. He would break the cultivation level limit of the rain world so that second-step immortal cultivators could also be born in the rain world. Then, he would move his base from the eastern heaven back to the rain world, to Yu Country and to 7 Apricot City. Senior Lin, a true immortal realm expert like you is already invincible in the world, right? The two ascended young ladies were filled with admiration towards Senior Du Zhen, who was leading the group. Du Zhen, who was called Senior Lin, stroked his white beard. His face was filled with joy. Obviously, he enjoyed the admiration of the cultivators who had ascended from the lower world. At the same time, his smile also contained a hint of disdain and a sense of superiority. Du Zhen wants to be invincible in the eastern heaven? Stop joking. Perhaps only cultivators who had just ascended would say such foolish words. However, this Duzhen was very thick-skinned. No one knew whether he did it on purpose or not, but he didn't correct the two young ladies' wrong point of view. Instead, he accepted their admiration. It's not easy to ascend to the upper world. You, who have just ascended to the upper world, should carefully observe this opportunity to experience the life and death battle with those ancient fierce beasts with my supreme true immortal realm cultivation level. If you can learn something from it, it will be a great fortune for you. Full rudder left. I sense that there is a young ancient fierce beast in that direction. It's very dangerous to fight with it. However, I'm not afraid. Because I've experienced this kind of life and death battle too many times. If you are afraid, then you don't need to cultivate this Tao. Duzhen's words were quite elegant, as if fighting against that young ancient ferocious beast was a battle of life and death. All of a sudden, including the two ascended young ladies, all the low-level juniors on the star boat who didn't know the truth were impressed by Duzhen's fearlessness. At the same time, they started to feel nervous about the upcoming battle. They were a bit worried that if Duzhen was killed by that young ancient fierce beast, would they die together with him? Senior, are we going to die? The faces of the two girls turned pale. Apparently, they were afraid of the young ancient ferocious beasts that Duzhen had mentioned. Don't be afraid. As long as I'm here, none of you will die. Even if I have to die, I won't let juniors die in front of me. The people I want to protect, I will take them back even if the Heavenly Will wants to take them back. Duzhen said as if he really thought that he was the Heavenly Emperor. Senior. Thank you. Thank you for being willing to sacrifice your life to protect us. Including the two ascended young ladies, all the disciples of the Fantasy Clouds sect who didn't know the truth were deeply moved. The man surnamed Duzhen was proud of himself. He was about to boast when a timid and honest young man's voice was heard. Senior Lin, aren't young ancient fierce beasts only at the void fragmentation realm? Why do you, the dignified Duzhen, have to fight a void fragmentation realm cultivator to death? It's so hard to understand. It's so hard to understand. A dull-looking, honest fat man rubbed the back of his head and said in confusion. Silence. The star boat was in dead silence. So, the young ancient fierce beast only has the strength of void fragmentation realm. Senior Lin actually boasted about killing a young void fragmentation realm beast as an earth-shattering battle. No one else could do this, Senior. It turns out that young ancient fierce beasts are very weak. Including the two ascended young ladies, all of them didn't admire Duzhen anymore. What replaced it was a kind of disappointment, a faint feeling of being deceived. The atmosphere became very awkward. Duzhen glared at the honest fat man, wondering whose family this kid came from. How could he be so talkative? Then, he scolded him angrily. You talk too much. You talk too much. Go, run 200 laps around the ship. If you miss one lap, get off my ship. Ah. Why do you want me to run? It's so hard to understand. It's so hard to understand. The honest fat man scratched the back of his head. He didn't know what he said wrong, but he still went to run the laps obediently. Really? Where did this fat man come from? Why haven't I seen him before? Duzhen looked at the fat man running the laps obediently and cursed. He's probably a disciple from the outer sect. Outer sect disciples are all marginal figures. It's not strange that you haven't seen him before. A disciple answered. However, it seems that no outer sect disciples are arranged to participate in this trial. Don't tell me this guy is pretending to be an outer sect disciple and got on the ship. Duzhen squinted his eyes and looked at the fat man who was running the laps foolishly. He had some thoughts in his mind. However, he quickly shook his head and denied this speculation. How could it be so easy to pretend to be a disciple of the sect to participate in the trial? Cultivators who weren't from the sect would definitely trigger the alarm as soon as they got on the specially made star boat, unless they were an ancient monster. How could this stupid fat man be that kind of ancient monster? How could he avoid the detection of the star boat? Of course not. Oh right. I heard from this fat man that his name is Yuichi. A disciple interrupted. Oh. There's actually the word chi in this fat man's name? No wonder he looks like a fool when he sees this place. He doesn't even know that he has offended Senior Lin by talking nonsense. Another disciple said speechlessly. Yuichi. Yuichi, Ning Fan frowned for the first time and his expression turned serious. His eyes were filled with green light as he looked at the star boat which was gradually getting further away. He looked at the fat man who was running laps on the boat while sweating profusely. This fat man looked very ordinary. However, he gave Ning Fan an extraordinary feeling for some unknown reason. Yuichi, this person's true cultivation base is indeed not high. However, his Tao is very strange. It seems to be emotionless but it also has emotions. It seems to have emotions but it is also emotionless. The emotionlessness in his Tao is very similar to Senior Mu Song's emotionless eye-opening technique. His Tao has emotions but it also has an indescribable mystery and endless obsession. Yuichi. So that's how it is. The meaning of this name is that Yu Sheng is an idiot. No. The idiot is not him. It's me. When the star boat disappeared into the distance and disappeared from his sight, Ning Fan revealed himself and muttered to himself. It seemed like he was talking to himself but it also seemed like he had an ulterior motive. He was purposely saying it to someone. At the moment when Ning Fan said those words, the eyelids of the fat man who was running laps on the star boat moved imperceptibly. However, his eyes regained their usual blank look. When the fools see my name, they think that they are fools. When the true ones see my name, they know that it is true. Yu Sheng is an idiot. The idiot is not me but you. So this Eastern Yama is actually a person who has fallen into a devil because of his obsession. Those who are obsessed without regrets are the supreme true devils. I didn't expect that I would meet such a person unintentionally. This is the wonder of fate. Is this person also here for the boundless rainbow? This is a little troublesome. If I were to compete in strength, my cultivation base would only be around the divine transformation realm. I'm definitely not a match for the Eastern Yama. However, if I were to compete in Tao sense. The fat man obviously did not say anything. However, there seemed to be another voice that came from another world that Ning Fan could not see. It reverberated in heaven and earth in a way that Ning Fan could not hear. Chapter 1164. Ning Fan parted the sea mist and flew towards the inner region of the Scarlet Rainbow Starry Sea in another direction. Ning Fan was a little concerned about the two ascended cultivators. After all, they had all ascended from the lower worlds. If they encounter any danger in this starry sea, Ning Fan would not mind giving them some help within his capabilities. However, he was more concerned about the fatty. Yuichi, this person is definitely not a divine transformation realm junior. If he did not notice some problems with this person, Ning Fan would not dare to be so sure. However, he was now absolutely sure that the fatty was a powerful being and not the honest and gullible person that he appeared to be. This person's Tao sense gives me a feeling of rejection. This rejection comes from the ancient devil bloodline. Could it be that this person's true identity is a Buddha cultivator? This person's cultivation base is only at the divine transformation realm. He didn't purposely disguise his cultivation base. It's real. He didn't come here with his true body. Instead, it's something like his divine clone. However, it's not the kind of divine clone that I understand. His true body's cultivation base should have already reached the half-step quasi-saint realm and it's already very close to the quasi-saint realm. There's also an indescribable feeling coming from this person which is extremely similar to Senior Mu Song. Even quasi-saints like Xiang Bozi and Senior Ho Tu don't have that kind of feeling. Could it be that this person is a cultivator who has opened his eyes like Senior Mu Song? What kind of feeling does it feel like to open one's eyes? I can't see the world that he sees. There doesn't seem to be such a powerful Buddha cultivator among the old monsters of the Eastern Heaven. Could it be that this person came from the other three heavens? If my guess is correct, when did he send his divine clone to the eastern heaven? If it's before the chaos of the Realm River, it's still fine. However, if he can still ignore the seal of the immortal sovereign of the Antiquity era and descend to the eastern heaven after the chaos of the Realm River begins, then his means are rather terrifying. Ning Fan's mind was racing. He did not know if this fatty's arrival was good or bad or if he was plotting something. A dignified half-step saint would not go through so much trouble to descend to the eastern heaven to scheme against the weak cultivators on the same ship as him. Judging from the surprised expression on the fatty's face, he didn't come for him. This encounter was just an accident. Could it be that this person also came for the Kiliacosm rainbow in this place? Just as Ning Fan was muttering to himself, the waves in the distance suddenly changed. A torrent of water shot up to the sky. That water pillar soared 3,000 zhang into the sky. When it fell back to the ground, it suddenly divided into 6 parts, turning into 6 water spears that were 10,000 zhang long and pierced towards Ning Fan. We've only entered the Star Sea for 500,000 kilometers, and we're already being attacked by ferocious beasts. To Ning Fan, who had just gone through a massacre in the border river, this level of attack was nothing at all. He casually took out the drowned world bottle that had been repaired by Wu Lao Ba again, and absorbed all the water element attacks into the bottle silently. Then, he opened his mouth and breathed out flames of fire and thunder to burn the sea. Within the span of a few breaths, thousands of square kilometers of the sea were evaporated. Hundreds of charred corpses of ancient fierce beasts were revealed at the bottom of the dried sea. They were all adult Shirkong and thought-shatterer fierce beasts. Ning Fan continued moving forward. After killing hundreds of ancient ferocious beasts along the way, he finally arrived at his destination. This was the deepest part of the Scarlet Rainbow Starry Sea. A 9-colored rainbow hung above the sea like a giant dragon drinking water. Below the gigantic rainbow, countless ancient ferocious beasts emerged from the surface of the sea. They were absorbing the spiritual chi within the rainbow and cultivating day after day. The higher the cultivation base of the ferocious beasts, the better the cultivation spots they occupied. Only the 3 half-saint realm ferocious beasts were qualified to step into the spirit vein of the 9-colored rainbow. Once other ferocious beasts step into that place, they would certainly be killed by the 3 half-saint realm ferocious beasts. Ning Fan's arrival interrupted the cultivation of these ferocious beasts. When they realized that Ning Fan was just an immortal king realm cultivator, countless ferocious beasts' eyes glinted with ferocious light. They directly charged at Ning Fan. There were a few ancient ferocious beasts among them. The eyes of these ferocious beasts were completely covered with ferocious flames. Their hearts were filled with evil thoughts. It was extremely difficult for them to be tamed by cultivators, let alone have any form of communication with Ning Fan. Even a half-saint of the eastern heaven like Taoist Mu Song once had the idea of taming a few half-saint realm ferocious beasts to serve as their mountain guards. Unfortunately, after many attempts, they failed. In the end, they could only give up. Even if they enslaved them, they could not control these ferocious beasts. They would rather die than be restrained by humans. They were incomparably ferocious. Those half-saints of the eastern heaven could not tame the half-saint realm ferocious beasts, but they also did not dare to kill the ferocious beasts whose cultivation bases were too high. It was because the ferocious beasts in this place were formed from the purest evil thoughts. In particular, the ferocious beasts at the eternal ancient realm were much more difficult to deal with. When one kills a ferocious beast at the eternal ancient realm, they would definitely be tainted with the other party's eternal ancient realm evil thoughts, which were extremely difficult to remove. The higher a cultivator's cultivation base was, the more unwilling they were to be tainted with things that were detrimental to their cultivation. Besides, because these ferocious beasts usually only moved around within the Scarlet Rainbow Starry Sea and would not infringe upon the interests of the Eastern Heavens cultivators, the great existences of the Eastern Heavens simply allowed these ferocious beasts to exist and completely treated the Scarlet Rainbow Starry Sea as a training ground for their disciples. 3 million, 4 million, 5 million. Are there more than 5 million ferocious beasts in this place? It's enough for me to summon them several times. No one knew what Ning Fan was calculating in his mind. Suddenly, he bit the tip of his finger and used his blood as a guide. Then, he performed a hand seal. He only performed a single hand seal. However, this single hand seal actually summoned a medium-sized number of ghost flowers of the netherworld on the Rainbow Sea. Ning Fan was like an emperor who ruled over all of the ghost flowers. After Ning Fan's continuous practice, he had already reduced the thousands of hand seals needed to summon the ghost flowers of the netherworld to a single hand seal. If he improves his proficiency in this technique, he would be able to release this technique without any hand seals sooner or later. A medium-sized summon could summon 10 undying ghost soldiers to participate in the battle. Unfortunately, Ning Fan only had one undying ghost soldier at the moment. Myriad Sage Dragon King, who only had 8 heads, was summoned by Ning Fan. As soon as the first wave of ferocious beasts saw Myriad Sage Dragon King, they instinctively felt a little fearful. However, that fear was quickly drowned by the ferocity in their hearts. Without slowing down, they continued to charge towards Ning Fan. As an undying ghost soldier, Myriad Sage Dragon King was absolutely loyal to Ning Fan. How could he allow these ferocious beasts to attack Ning Fan? His 8 snake heads shot out 1,000,000 snake shadows. Countless ferocious beasts were drowned by the sea of snakes and killed by poison. Their blood was all devoured by the ghost flowers of the netherworld nearby. In just 10 breaths' time, more than 10,000 ferocious beasts were killed by Myriad Sage Dragon King, including a ferocious beast that was at the Quasi-Emperor realm. His actions enraged all the ferocious beasts in the area. More ferocious beasts charged towards Myriad Sage Dragon King, but they were all easily killed by Myriad Sage Dragon King. Don't kill too many of them. Kill 1,000,000 first. Leave the rest. Ning Fan ordered Myriad Sage Dragon King. Understood. Myriad Sage Dragon King answered respectfully. In just a few moves, Myriad Sage Dragon King had already killed more than 100,000 ferocious beasts. If there are no experts at the same level as him stopping him, completing the mission of killing 1,000,000 ferocious beasts would only be a matter of time. Roar! Finally, there were Immortal Emperor realm ferocious beasts that could no longer sit still. A few Immortal Emperors joined hands and attacked Myriad Sage Dragon King. Their attacks were not weak, but they could not injure Myriad Sage Dragon King, who was an undying ghost soldier. After another 10 rounds, the physical bodies of the Immortal Emperor realm ferocious beasts were all bitten to pieces by Myriad Sage Dragon King. Only their demon souls managed to escape. Courting death, seeing that the Immortal Emperors could not do anything to Myriad Sage Dragon King, a half-saint realm ferocious beast finally made its move. It was a ferocious beast that looked like a 9-winged demonic phoenix. Every single ferocious beast was formed from the evil thoughts of numerous villains that had perished. Obviously, the evil thoughts of this ferocious beast at the half-saint realm was formed from a 9-winged evil phoenix, and the other evil thoughts were supplementary. That was why it had taken such a form. Ant. Myriad Sage Dragon King's expression was indifferent as he clashed with the 9-winged demonic phoenix. He easily gained the upper hand. In reality, this 9-winged demonic phoenix and Myriad Sage Dragon King's strength were about the same. However, who could teach an undying ghost soldier to be undying? The undying Myriad Sage Dragon King had a huge advantage. He could take all of the 9-winged demonic phoenix's attacks head-on and remain unscathed. However, the 9-winged demonic phoenix was different. Every time it was injured by Myriad Sage Dragon King, it would be a real injury. As time passed, the situation became more and more disadvantageous. This was an unequal battle. If the 9-winged demonic phoenix did not have any powerful reinforcements, its defeat was only a matter of time. I will help in battle. Another half-saint ferocious beast that looked like a black Qilin joined the battle. However, even though it was 2 against 1, Myriad Sage Dragon King still had the upper hand. It was a pity that Myriad Sage Dragon King could only gain the upper hand. Due to the lack of offense, it was extremely difficult for him to crush 2 half-saints in a one-sided battle. To an undying ghost soldier, defense is actually not important anymore. There are very few methods that can cause harm to them. Myriad Sage Dragon King is good at defense and self-preservation. These methods slightly overlap with the undying ability of the Undying Ghost Soldier. His offensive power isn't that high. If his offensive abilities are a little stronger, with his undying body, he should be able to easily defeat experts at the same level as him even if he were to kill 2 or 3 experts at the same level as him. However, right now, he only has the upper hand. Ning Fan shook his head slightly. He was not satisfied with Myriad Sage Dragon King's offensive ability. Inwardly, he was thinking whether he should choose experts with high offensive abilities as his materials to produce Undying Ghost Soldiers in the future. Only then could he maximize the advantage of the Undying Ghost Soldier, capture the bandits. Capture the king. The third half-saint ferocious beast saw that its 2 companions were in a disadvantageous situation. It actually did not go to help them. Instead, it sneakily attacked Ning Fan, who was watching the battle from the side. It was a huge dog that looked like a white-eared dog. Its fur was very long and it looked as majestic as a lion. To be able to come up with the strategy of capturing the bandits and capturing the king, the spiritual intelligence of this white-eared dog was obviously not so low that it was hopeless. It could almost be considered as the wisest among the ancient ferocious beasts in this place. The Undying Ghost Soldier was indeed difficult to kill. However, if it could directly control the summoner and force the summoner to cancel the summoning, it would undoubtedly be able to get rid of Myriad Sage Dragon King in an instant. The strategy was correct. However, this huge dog had underestimated Ning Fan's strength. Ning Fan took a step forward and transformed into his eternal true body within the myriad of golden flames. He opened his mouth and breathed out a sea of flames that reached the heavens, burning the white-eared dog's fur and turning it into a black dog. Although the white-eared dog seemed to be severely injured, the burnt fur on the surface of its body had already neutralized most of the destructive power of the flaming lightning flames. Therefore, its physical body did not suffer much damage. Even so, the white-eared dog was still greatly shocked. It could not imagine that Ning Fan, who was just an immortal king realm cultivator, would actually have such terrifying flames on his body. How would it dare to underestimate Ning Fan anymore? Its abdomen bulged slightly and it let out a furious roar. Billowing black wind gushed out from its abdomen, turning into tens of unknown black wind blades that attacked Ning Fan. Ning Fan could not recognize what the black wind was, but he felt a hint of threat from it. Since it could make his eternal true body feel threatened, it was obvious that the black wind was not ordinary. He did not take the black wind head-on. Instead, he summoned the shadow of the god exterminating shield of the ancient country and easily blocked the incoming black wind. Without giving the white-eared dog more chances to attack, Ning Fan dispersed the shadow of the god exterminating shield. Then, he raised a finger and pointed at the white-eared dog. 10 times Tribulation Flash. A scarlet-red pillar of Tribulation Flash shot out in all directions. The white-eared dog tried to block the red light with the black wind in its mouth, but it was easily destroyed. What kind of destructive red light was this? It gave the white-eared dog a deep sense of danger. This was the Tribulation Flash that Ning Fan created by imitating the blood god Gung Wu. Its principle was similar to the blood god Gung Wu, but the details were more mysterious. When the white-eared dog realized that it could not block the attack of the red light, it immediately tried to dodge it. However, the red light seemed to be able to track its movements. No matter how it tried to dodge, it would still catch up to it in the end. This kind of spatial tracking ability was something that the blood god Gung Wu's Tribulation Flash did not have. It was also Ning Fan's unique creation. In the end, after the white-eared dog dodged tens of times, it was still hit by the red light of the Tribulation Flash. It let out a muffled groan. The destructive power of the Tribulation Flash was slightly stronger than the mid-grade innate flame lightning flame. This time, it really hurt the white-eared dog. 10 times Tribulation Flash is the limit of my current blood Tribulation Flash. Due to the difference in our cultivation bases, the destructive power of my Tribulation Flash is far inferior to the blood god Gung Wu's Tribulation Flash. However, it is still enough to deal with some weaker half-saints. 10 times Tribulation Flash. 10 fingers shot out consecutively. Ning Fan raised both of his hands. All 10 of his fingers released the tribulation flash at the same time. 10 scarlet light pillars whizzed out. Surprisingly, he did not use much of his magic power. One should know that without the spirit recovering rice, Ning Fan did not activate the cross-shaped halos as he usually did in order to avoid wasting his energy. Currently, he did not have the infinite magic power to enhance his attacks. Under such circumstances, he only consumed a small amount of magic power when he continuously used the tribulation flash with his 10 fingers. Obviously, the consumption of magic power of the tribulation flash that Ning Fan developed was rather low. It was an extremely practical method of attack. 10 rays of red light landed on the white-eared dog's body at the same time and exploded like blood-red fireworks. Muffled groans could be heard continuously in midair. The white-eared dog's injuries rapidly worsened. 1 hour passed. The white-eared dog was already on the verge of death after being beaten by Ning Fan. As for Myriad Saint Dragon King, he forcefully killed 1 million low-grade ferocious beasts while enduring the attacks of 2 half-Saint Realm ferocious beasts and completed his mission. When the number of dead ferocious beasts reached 1 million, the netherworld ghost flowers began to multiply. It was the proof that the intermediate summoning technique had been upgraded to a high summoning technique. Under the condition of the high summoning technique, Ning Fan had the chance to turn the enemies he killed into undying ghost soldiers. Rumble. Rumble, another round of tribulation flash that was 10 times stronger was launched consecutively. The white-eared dog was blasted into pieces by Ning Fan. Its blood splattered across the sky and it died with hatred. After its blood fell to the ground, it was devoured by the ghost flower of the netherworld. Its remnant soul was also devoured by the flower. Lightning Infant, appear. Protect me and don't let anyone disturb me. Ning Fan released the Lightning Infant and ordered. He was going to use the white-eared dog as the material to create an undying ghost soldier. Understood. The lightning infant rode on the ancestral lightning sparrow while holding the lightning guard in its hand. Any ferocious beasts that tried to disturb Ning Fan would be killed by its lightning power. Due to the huge difference in strength between the white-eared dog and Ning Fan, the success rate of creating an undying ghost soldier could reach up to 70%. Compared to the 30% success rate of creating Daoist Xianwei, 70% was quite good. 70%. If my luck is taken into consideration, the true success rate should be above 75%. Ning Fan estimated. A success rate of 3/4 was really not low. If he still fails, it would not be a problem of luck but a problem of his technique. Unfortunately, this was just the second time Ning Fan attempted to create an undying ghost soldier. Compared to the previous time, the number of mistakes he made this time was significantly reduced. However, there were still some flaws in Ning Fan's technique which eventually led to the failure of the production of the undying ghost soldier. This was the second time he failed to create an undying ghost soldier. It's actually so difficult, Ning Fan sighed. It would be a lie to say that he was not disappointed. However, with his firm Dao heart, he almost walked out of the shadow of failure in just an instant. Forget it. I'll wait for 24 hours and try again. The ghost flower of the netherworld would need 24 hours to create an undying ghost soldier. It could only be created once a day. In that case, it would be meaningless even if he killed the remaining 2 half-step Saint Realm ferocious beasts. Ning Fan dismissed the summoning of the ghost flower of the netherworld and kept his lightning infant. Then, he left the place. As soon as the ancient ferocious beasts saw Ning Fan fleeing after committing the murder, all of them felt greatly humiliated. They chased after him for a while but it was naturally impossible for them to catch up to him. Feeling helpless, these ancient ferocious beasts could only return to the 9-colored rainbow one after another to absorb the rainbow's spiritual chi and cultivate again. 24 hours later, Ning Fan returned to them. As soon as they saw that Ning Fan still dared to come to them, a large number of ferocious beasts pounced at him. They still did not have any fear towards him. Fear? The ancient ferocious beasts in this place obviously did not have that kind of emotion. They also did not have such a high-level thinking ability. As expected of a beast that is formed from evil intent. You actually only know how to kill your enemies. Unfortunately, I'm not afraid when you have 3 half-step Saint Realm experts. Now that there are only 2 of you left, you are even less of a match for me. Summoning, Ghost Flower of the Netherworld. Myriad Saint Dragon King appears. Tao Destruction Lightning Infant appears. Ning Fan did not even need Aphrodite and Black Devil's help to kill these ancient ferocious beasts with ease. This made the 2 ladies extremely depressed. They still wanted to help Ning Fan, but it seemed like they did not have the chance to do so anymore. 2 hours later, Ning Fan and his group had killed a total of 1 million ferocious beasts. Once again, they met the requirements of the high-grade summoning. Now, they began to create undying ghost soldiers under the prerequisite of the high-grade summoning. The ferocious beasts who did not know what fear was naturally did not know how to escape. In the end, another half-step Saint Realm ferocious beast was killed by Ning Fan. This time, it was the 9-winged demon phoenix. The success rate was 65%. The strength of this demon phoenix was slightly stronger than the white-eared azure dog. Thus, the success rate was slightly lower. This time, Ning Fan tried his best to improve his technique. As it was already his 3rd time creating ghost soldiers, he was getting more and more familiar with his technique. Basically, he did not make any mistakes anymore. However, he still failed this time. This time, it was not a problem with his technique. Instead, it was Ning Fan's bad luck that caused him to encounter a failure rate of 35%. No matter how lucky a person is, they would not be able to be lucky all the time. Regarding this, Ning Fan also felt deeply helpless. He could only leave again. On the 3rd day, Ning Fan came again. There was only 1 half-step Saint Realm ferocious beast left in this place. Under the joint attacks of Ning Fan, Myriad Saint Dragon King and the Tao Destruction Lightning Infant, this ferocious beast that looked like a black Qilin died with hatred. This time, Ning Fan did not show any mercy. All the low-grade ferocious beasts that tried to attack him were killed. He killed 3 million low-grade ferocious beasts in one go as sacrificial offerings before he started to create undying ghost soldiers. Perhaps the number of sacrificial offerings this time was much higher. Perhaps Ning Fan did not make a single mistake in his technique this time. Perhaps Ning Fan's good luck finally worked for once. This time, the production of the undying ghost soldier was a success. After Myriad Saint Dragon King, Ning Fan now had a 2nd undying ghost soldier, the Black Qilin Ghost Soldier. Having 1 more half-step Saint Realm expert under his command would certainly increase Ning Fan's strength by a lot. Moreover, he had also eliminated all the ancient ferocious beasts in this place. Within the range of hundreds of thousands of li, there was no longer any ferocious beast that would come to stop Ning Fan from doing his job. It's time to mature the Great Thousand Rainbow. Ning Fan stood on the surface of the sea and looked at the magnificent and dazzling 9-colored rainbow in the misty sea. His expression was a little helpless. In order to develop the pseudo-devil cavity, he needed to be busy in this star sea for around 20 years. I hope that nothing will go wrong in the situation in the northern heaven during these 20 years. 1 year passed. 2 years passed. 3 years passed. Ning Fan was busy accelerating the maturation of the Great Thousand Rainbow in the depths of the Star Sea. At the outer region of the Star Sea, there was also a star boat that carried the cultivators of the Illusory Cloud sect to train. It was the 7th year since Ning Fan came to the Red Rainbow Star Sea. It was also the 7th year since the disciples of the Illusory Cloud sect came here to train. Rumbled in a certain uninhabited sea region, the Lin surnamed Duzhen of the Illusory Cloud sect killed 3 to 4 young ferocious beasts in a single breath. These are the 1,449th ancient ferocious beasts that I have killed in the past 7 years. I have roamed the Star Sea for 7 years and I have never tasted defeat. I wanted to find a worthy opponent but I couldn't find one. There is nothing more unfortunate than this in life. Being invincible is so lonely. On the star boat, the Lin surnamed Duzhen waved his sleeves to shake off the sea mist. Then, he boasted like a senior expert. Behind him, the group of disciples of the illusory clouds sect had already become numb to Duzhen's behavior. None of them bothered to talk to him. Even the two young ladies who had just ascended were speechless about the Lin surnamed Duzhen. They thought to themselves, are all the legendary true immortal old monsters like this? Those magnificent stories about true immortals are really lies. Senior Lin, why didn't you dare to go deeper into the sea for 7 years? It's so hard to understand. If you want to find powerful opponents so badly, why don't you drive the star boat to the deeper part of the sea? There must be adult ancient ferocious beasts there that can satisfy your desire to fight. The fat man named Yuichi rubbed the back of his head with an ignorant look on his face. You're so young. How could you know? If I didn't have you low-grade disciples with me, I wouldn't have been wandering around here. I was just worried about your safety. Don't tell me that I'm afraid of fighting those truly powerful ancient ferocious beasts. Don't tell me that in your heart, this old man is a coward who fears death. The Lin surnamed Duzhen let out a long sigh, as if he had expected better from him. Just as he was about to teach the talkative fat man a lesson, his expression suddenly stiffened as he froze on the spot. On the way the star boat had sailed, a large area of the sea had been evaporated by unparalleled flames. Hundreds of charred corpses of void shredders and thought shatterers were lying in front of everyone's eyes. My God. All of them were adult ferocious beasts, and their auras were even stronger than Senior Lin's. Why did they die here? Did they encounter a natural disaster? It's too hot. The fire power in this place is too strong. I can't believe there's lightning power here. This place must have been destroyed by heavenly flame and heavenly lightning. Otherwise, how could the seawater have evaporated for so many years? As long as the seawater flows to this place, it will be evaporated by the residual heat. This is terrifying. The Fantasy Cloud sect disciples were all flabbergasted. The most spectacular scene they had seen over the years was the duel between Duzhen and a young life immortal beast. They had never seen hundreds of charred corpses of void shredders and thought shatterers. The Lin surnamed Duzhen's heart pounded wildly. How could he still be in the mood to brag? He was truly frightened by what he had seen. The low-grade disciples couldn't see it, but how could he, the mighty Duzhen, not see it? This place hadn't been destroyed by heavenly flame and heavenly lightning. Instead, it had been destroyed by a supreme being with the legendary pre-heaven flame and lightning power. After so many years, the dried seabed still couldn't be filled with seawater. It was caused by the residual fire and lightning power that hadn't melted for so many years. What kind of expert could evaporate such a large area of the sea in the center of the sea and create a strange water-free area? Immortal Venerable? Immortal King? No, at least an immortal emperor. Could it be that a senior immortal emperor had done this? Judging from the aura, that senior should have passed by this place 6 or 7 years ago. Could it be that he had gone to the depths of the Star Sea? No matter how arrogant Duzhen was, he was still deeply shocked at this moment. The only one who didn't feel shocked was the fatty. He squinted his eyes, which was a rare sight. He looked at the hollow area in front of him and muttered to himself. The flame of blazing thunder, innate middle grade. The Eastern Yama King is quite capable. I wonder what rank this technique is among his many techniques. Compared with my Bodhi green lotus fire, which one is stronger? Chapter 1165. The fat man named Yuichi revealed an enigmatic smile. This was the first time he smiled like this. His smile was filled with indescribable kindness and carefreeness. A big belly can tolerate things that cannot be tolerated in the world. The moment he opened his mouth, he laughed at the laughable people in the world. Just like Maitreya. I kind of want to meet this Eastern Yama King. Since that's the case, let's use this Kiliakosm rainbow as a bet. Let's see if this poor monk is better than this devil. Fatty's right hand, which was hidden in his sleeve, formed a Buddhist finger seal. No one on the ship noticed it. As soon as he did, countless illusory golden flower petals that were invisible to the naked eye fell from the distant sea behind the star boat. As Nye Tian activated his illusory power, the originally calm sea currents in the distance suddenly turned into raging waves. At the same time, hundreds of fierce beasts jumped out of the water and charged towards the star boat, roaring furiously. Those fierce beasts were the result of an extremely profound illusion technique. Even a half-step saint expert might not be able to see through it without a certain level of eyesight. Of course, Lin and Du Jin couldn't figure it out. Originally, these people were still marveling at the miraculous scene of the burning sea that Ning Fan had unintentionally created. However, when they suddenly noticed a large group of ancient ferocious beasts appearing at the back of the star boat, all of their faces turned pale with fright. How could they still have the mood to admire the miraculous scene of the burning sea anymore? All of them were nearly scared to death. WHWW, what's going on? Why did so many ancient beasts suddenly appear behind us? 1,000. At least 1,000. Moreover, the vast majority of the beasts were stronger than Senior Lin. We're finished. We must have encountered a large number of dire beasts. Senior Lin, quickly save us. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Senior Lin, aren't you invincible? Aren't you lonely? Please make your move. Kill all these beasts. Please. The illusory cloud sect's disciples all had ashen faces due to excessive fear. Although they had been training in the Sea of Stars for 7 years, they had never encountered a danger of such a scale. How could they remain calm? In a panic, they tried everything they could to ask Du Zhen to kill thousands of ferocious beasts to save them. Du Zhen, who everyone had high hopes for, felt as if his heart had been crushed by 10,000 bulls. What a joke! How could he have the ability to kill thousands of berserk beasts in front of him? He might not even be able to defeat any one of them. If thousands of berserk beasts swarmed him, he would be smashed into pieces in an instant. Nonsense, nonsense, nonsense. The heavens above have the virtue of cherishing life. How can I kill so much? It's not that I don't want to fight with them. Let's let them go for now. Let's change directions and see if we can get rid of these ferocious beasts. Du Zhen is so scared that his voice is trembling. However, he still wants to save face and pretends to be a senior master. It is really hard for him. The rear was already blocked by thousands of vicious beasts, and it was impossible to turn back. They would definitely have to face these vicious beasts head-on. At this critical moment, Du Zhen, surnamed Lin, suddenly had a bold idea, which was to drive the star boat to the deep-sea region, and find that immortal emperor, who had entered the deep-sea region 6 or 7 years ago, to save his life, before those fierce beasts arrived. Under normal circumstances, he would never dare to go to the deep sea. But there was no other way. If I don't go to the deep-sea region and ask for the senior immortal emperor's help, who else would have the ability to kill so many powerful ferocious beasts? Therefore, under Fatty's deliberate arrangement, the cultivators of the illusory cloud sect began to flee for their lives in a panic. They ran all the way to the deep-sea region, approaching Ning Fan. Along the way to the deep-sea region, the star boat did not run into any ferocious beasts. There were only thousands of ferocious beasts that were formed by illusion techniques chasing after them. Of course, it was because Ning Fan had already killed all the ferocious beasts along the way. After running for an unknown period of time, Du Zhen suddenly noticed a 9-colored rainbow hanging on the surface of the sea in front of him. It was like a giant dragon absorbing water. That rainbow was the most beautiful rainbow that Du Zhen had ever seen in his life. Unfortunately, he did not have the mood to appreciate such a beautiful scene. All he wanted to do was to survive. Under the rainbow, there are no ferocious beasts. However, there is still the lingering chi of a great battle. It has been 7 years since then. Obviously, a great battle has taken place here. Now, the baleful chi is so strong that it is not something that a low-grade cultivator could withstand. Under the rainbow, where the baleful chi was the heaviest, there was a white-robed young man standing on the surface of the water. He was planting a 9-colored plant on the surface of the water. Du Zhen could only see the blurry back of that white-robed young man. He could not see his face. He wanted to steer the star boat closer to the rainbow, but there was a gentle force stopping the star boat from moving forward. Obviously, that white-robed young man did not want others to disturb him. Even though he could not see that person's face clearly, Duzhen could sense an extremely powerful and strange qi from this person. He was very sure that this white-robed young man was the senior immortal emperor who had burned the seawater dry. Finally, he found a life-saving straw that could save him from drowning. He was so excited that tears and snot flowed down his face. "Senior, save me. I'm Lin Chong, a disciple of the Illusory Clouds sect. As long as Senior is willing to save my life, I'm willing to be your slave and never betray you for the rest of my life." Ning Fan, who was cultivating the 9-colored plant on the surface of the water, turned around. "You don't have to be my slave. I don't really need a servant with a cultivation base like yours anymore. However, it's not impossible for me to save your life. It's just that it's a little difficult." In fact, Ning Fan had already noticed everything that was happening on the star boat. He also knew that those ferocious beasts that were chasing after the star boat were all illusions. They would not really hurt anyone. The fatty was a Buddha cultivator. Since he was a Buddha cultivator, why would he kill indiscriminately? It was not worth it to get himself into trouble and hurt his own cultivation base. He was a black-bellied fatty. He had been scolded by Duzhen for a few years and laughed at by the cultivators on the same ship as him. Therefore, he purposely created some illusions to scare these low-level cultivators. Of course, the more important purpose of this illusions was to test Ning Fan's strength. A dignified half-step saint would actually be calculative with a group of juniors. On the surface, this fatty seemed to be a little narrow-minded. In fact, it was the embodiment of his magnanimity and his straightforward character. If a half-step saint old monster was humiliated by a low-level cultivator countless times, he would certainly not let those juniors go. He would either kill them if he was lenient or plot against them if he was serious. However, this fatty only created some illusions to scare people without harming their lives. He was already stronger than most of them. From this point of view, even though this fatty was black-bellied, he still had a magnanimity. He had 70% Buddha nature and 30% ruffian nature. He could be considered as a wonderful person. Involuntarily, Ning Fan had a higher opinion of this fat man. It had nothing to do with his strength. What he thought highly of was his way of doing things. As soon as they heard that Ning Fan was willing to help them, all the cultivators of the Illusory Clouds sect were overjoyed. They did not know that the ferocious beasts that were chasing after them were just illusions. Ning Fan turned around and his eyes fell on the star boat in the distance. He exchanged glances with the fatty for a short while and then looked away. From the fatty's eyes, he saw a hint of challenge. Challenge? Interesting. Ning Fan's eyes were covered with green light. His gaze shifted to the thousands of ferocious beasts on the surface of the sea as if he wanted to see through all the illusions. Unfortunately, he could not see them clearly. The fatty's attainments in illusions were quite high. Even though Ning Fan had the eyesight of the second level of the heaven being realm, he could not see through all the veins of the illusions. He could only see 40 to 50% of them. As for the remaining 50 to 60%, he would need to rely on the experience he had accumulated in the past to break the illusions. This was also the reason why Ning Fan felt that it was a little difficult to break this technique. This was obviously 1,000 times more difficult than killing thousands of ferocious beasts. This was the first time Ning Fan had a direct confrontation with this fatty of unknown origin. He's actually at the second level of the heaven being realm. This Eastern Yama is really unexpected. In terms of the eyesight of the heaven being realm, I am not as good as him. However, if you want to break my illusions, you can't just rely on your eyesight. There are too many things in this world that you can see but you can't touch. The more you want to get close to them, the more you can't get them. The part that you can't touch is the most mysterious part of illusions. The fatty's eyes were filled with confidence. He wanted to see how many breaths this Eastern Yama, whose name shook the entire realm river, could last under his illusions. Very powerful. Each of the 1,000 ferocious beasts that he summoned was created using different illusory techniques. These 1,000 ferocious beasts would involve more than 1,000 illusory techniques. This person's illusory techniques are above mine. With the illusory techniques that I have mastered, I can at most break 600 of them. As for the remaining 400, it will be very difficult. Bang! Bang! Ning Fan lifted his finger and pointed at a ferocious beast across the sea. Each time his finger touched, a ferocious beast would be turned into powder. 1 breath passed. 2 breaths passed. 3 breaths passed. In the blink of an eye, 140 breaths had passed. Ning Fan had already destroyed 600 ferocious beasts using his illusory techniques. As for the remaining 400 beasts, he could not break them with his experience. What was more troublesome was that he realized that he had fallen into the fatty's trap. The 1,000 illusory techniques were just the surface. The fatty's illusory techniques actually included illusion traps. As the name suggested, an illusion trap was a trap that was added to one's own illusory techniques. If one could not detect the trap, the more he tried to break the illusion, the more he would be bewitched by it. Ning Fan was currently in such a situation. It was his first time encountering such a cunning illusory technique. Due to a moment of carelessness, his sea of consciousness was invaded by the opponent's illusory technique. Waves of dizziness could be felt from his forehead. This person's illusory techniques are even better than some quasi-saints. Ning Fan smiled bitterly and commented. He could not help but admit that in terms of illusory techniques alone, he was still no match for this fatty. However, it was also impossible for him to be defeated by the fatty's illusory technique. It took him 140 breaths of time to trigger an illusory technique trap. This Eastern Yama is really impressive. Unfortunately, he failed to detect the existence of the trap in the end. As a result, his sea of consciousness was invaded by my illusory technique. He has lost. Within 10 breaths, his sea of consciousness will certainly be damaged by my illusory technique. The fatty smiled confidently. However, his confidence only lasted for 10 breaths of time before it turned into astonishment. 10 breaths of time had passed. His illusory technique could not harm Ning Fan's sea of consciousness at all. 20 breaths, 30 breaths, 40 breaths. 100 breaths. For a full 100 breaths, the power of his illusory technique that invaded Ning Fan's sea of consciousness had attacked his sea of consciousness for more than 3,000 times. However, it still could not cause any damage to Ning Fan's sea of consciousness. What kind of abnormal defensive power was this sea of consciousness? Even after being attacked by a half-saint realm illusion technique, he could still remain unharmed. This was simply unheard of. Your mind is in a mess. This mess is the greatest taboo for illusion cultivators. Reflect illusory technique. Ning Fan had been waiting for the moment when the fatty's mind was in a mess. Then, he would reflect the illusory technique back to the fatty with his Fuli illusion technique. Puff, without any warning, the fatty on the star boat coughed out a mouthful of blood. The remaining 400 ferocious beasts at the back of the star boat also collapsed at the same time, turning into nothingness. I'm safe. I'm safe now. Why is Yuichi coughing out blood? Seeing that Ning Fan had killed all the ferocious beasts within a few hundred breaths, the people on the star boat burst into cheers. However, some of them also noticed that the fatty was coughing out blood. They felt that it was strange, but they were too lazy to think about it. I've lost the first round. The fatty smiled bitterly. He seemed to be talking to himself, but at the same time, it seemed like he was talking to Ning Fan across the ocean. No. For the time being, this round can be considered a draw. It's a fact that my attainment in illusory techniques is not as good as yours. The reason why I managed to injure you was because I used some other methods. It was an unfair victory. Ning Fan shook his head. He was also talking to himself, but it also seemed like he was giving the fatty an answer. What a great Eastern Yama. Since that's the case, I won't lose in the second round. The fatty wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and suddenly jumped off the star boat. Stepping on the waves, he walked towards the 9-colored rainbow where Ning Fan was. The barrier that Ning Fan had set up naturally could not stop him. Thus, under everyone's bewildered expression, the fatty walked towards Ning Fan's location step by step. How is this possible? Even the star boat could not pass through the barrier. Yuichi, who is just at the divine transformation realm, actually managed to break through it. Countless disciples of the illusory clouds sect were so shocked that they could not close their mouths. Each of them looked at Yuichi as if they were looking at a monster. It's fake. This brat's divine transformation realm cultivation base is fake. He's a powerful being. He's an existence whose cultivation base far surpasses mine. No wonder he wasn't included in the list of disciples to gain experience. He's not an outer sect disciple. He's an ancient monster who sneaked into the ship. The Lin surnamed Du Zhen was almost scared out of his wits. When he thought about how he had been bullying the fatty every day during this period of time, his limbs turned cold and his body trembled. Will I be retaliated against? Will I be killed? The dumbass fatty that I bullied every day is actually an ancient senior. My life is going to end here. The Lin surnamed Du Zhen let out a long sigh. Suddenly, his expression changed as he discovered something even scarier. As the sea mist was blown away by the wind, he finally saw Ning Fan's appearance on the distant sea surface with his spirit sense. The juniors behind him probably did not recognize Ning Fan. After all, their cultivation bases were too low. However, as the Lin surnamed Du Zhen, how could he not recognize Ning Fan? Ning Fan's portrait had already spread throughout the circle of the second step of the Eastern Heaven. The Palace Master of the Slaughter Palace is actually here. The Lin surnamed Du Zhen had never thought that he would meet his idol in the Scarlet Rainbow Starry Sea. All of a sudden, his breathing quickened. Ning Fan was a great hero who had almost pacified the entire border river with his own strength. Even though he was born timid, he admired those who were bold the most. He admired heroes like Ning Fan who shouldered the rise and fall of the world on their shoulders even more. When he thought about how his life was saved by his idol this time, the Lin surnamed Du Zhen was so happy that he could not find any words to describe it. His eyes were almost filled with tears. However, when he thought about how he had offended Yuichi, who was an ancient monster, he felt like the world was collapsing. He felt that his future was filled with darkness and no hope. What? This senior is the legendary palace master of the Slaughter Palace, the Rain Immortal Monarch? A disciple of the illusory cloud sect accidentally heard the Lin surnamed Du Zhen muttering to himself. Soon, the news spread across the entire starship. All the disciples of the illusory cloud sect gazed at Ning Fan's heroic appearance through the waves with admiration in their eyes. Even though they were not qualified to see Ning Fan's portrait, most of them had heard about Ning Fan's achievements in the Battle of the Border River. They had long admired this hero who saved the Eastern Heaven to the extreme. However, they had never thought that they would be able to see Ning Fan with their own eyes. Only the two young ladies who had just ascended did not know much about the Battle of the Border River. They only had a rough idea about it. Both of them were also shocked by Ning Fan's appearance and reputation. They recognized Ning Fan's appearance. They had known each other before they ascended. Isn't this person, the divine sovereign of the rain world, Ning Fan? How did he become the palace master of the Slaughter Palace who had shaken the entire Eastern Heaven? Even though the two young ladies were still inexperienced, they were not fools. They knew that there were some things that they should know but not reveal. Thus, they did not tell anyone about the divine sovereign of the rain world. However, when they looked at Ning Fan again, they could not help but blush shyly. No one knew that before they ascended, the person they admired the most was the divine sovereign of the rain world, Ning Fan. They had always looked forward to meeting the divine sovereign of the rain world. Unfortunately, they did not have the chance to meet him. Rumor had it that the divine sovereign of the rain world had ascended a long time ago in the mortal world. However, no one knew which day he had ascended to. They had never thought that the idol they admired in the past would appear in front of them in such a domineering manner. This was their first encounter. However, it was definitely the most magnificent encounter they had ever had. After the divine sovereign of the rain world ascended, he actually became a peerless expert in the eastern heaven and became the idol that countless legendary immortals looked up to and admired. They must keep this secret well and not let anyone else know about it. Ning Fan naturally did not know what the disciples of the illusory clouds sect were feeling. He was also too lazy to care about them. The only person who could catch his attention in this place was the fatty named Yuichi. Seeing the fatty walking towards him step by step, Ning Fan's eyes slightly narrowed. He wanted to see how this fatty was going to challenge him next. It seems like you are using the spiritual plant's secret technique of the true world to mature the great thousand rainbow. When the fatty got closer, he called out the origin of the nine-colored plant that Ning Fan planted on the surface of the water with just a glance. Brother Yu, are you also here for the great thousand rainbow? Ning Fan asked in an indifferent tone. That's right. If that's the case, let's use our own methods and see who will be able to obtain this great thousand rainbow in the end. As I wish. The fatty patted his big belly and said with a smile. Suddenly, he lifted his finger and pointed at the empty surface of the water in front of him. Suddenly, a small golden grass grew out. That small grass originally only had one color. However, as the fatty used his ability to change it, it grew taller and taller. Its color also changed. Eventually, it grew into a nine-colored plant. It was very similar to the nine-colored plant that Ning Fan was cultivating. Obviously, they were planning to use the same method to obtain the great thousand rainbow. You are 7 years late. Your nine-colored vine can't grow as fast as mine. You won't be able to bring this great thousand rainbow away. Or perhaps, you have some kind of secret technique that allows you to ignore the gap of 7 years. Ning Fan said meaningfully. Hee. This will be the second round of our battle. Eastern Yama King, I advise you to use all of your abilities. Otherwise, your 7 years of cultivation might go down the drain. When the flower blooms, the reverse life flower. The fatty smiled confidently. He lifted his finger and pointed at the surface of the water. Immediately, the nine-colored vine began to grow at an astonishing speed. As for Ning Fan's nine-colored vine, it began to wither at an astonishing speed. What kind of ability is this? It can actually seize Dao's sense and use it for its own use. Ning Fan's expression changed slightly. The nine-colored vine was none other than his Dao sense. It was the medium that he used to mature the great thousand rainbow. However, it was actually devoured by the fatty's strange ability. When the flower blooms, the reverse life flower, this was definitely not an ability that ordinary Buddhist cultivators could possess. The profoundness of this technique was highly likely to be the Buddhist technique of the true world that only titled Buddhist cultivators could inherit. You came from the Western paradise. Ning Fan instantly made a judgment. It was not a guess but a certainty. That's right. The fatty smiled calmly. Do you have a title? The 19th generation Maitreya. I see. It seems like if this Yuichi isn't a fake name, it must be the common name that you used to worship the Sand Gate. I didn't expect you to be the Maitreya of this generation. It seems like I can only fight against you with my full strength. Ning Fan's aura suddenly changed. The ancient devil destruction will spread throughout his body. He also pointed at the surface of the water and imitated some of the principles of the fatty's ability. He went against the ancient Buddhist concept and forcefully seized the Dao sense that was seized from him. Then, a shocking scene appeared. The withered nine-colored vine in front of Ning Fan began to regain its vitality. The nine-colored vine in front of the fatty, on the other hand, stopped growing and withered bit by bit. The situation was reversed. The Maitreya monk's heart skipped a beat. He never thought that Ning Fan would dare to seize the Dao sense with his ancient devil cultivation base and ancient Buddha's ability. He was too arrogant. Since the end of the Dharma age, he had never seen such an arrogant devil lord who dared to behave atrociously in front of a true Buddha. He had once again underestimated Ning Fan. Chapter 1166. Realizing that he had underestimated Ning Fan once again, the Maitreya monk's eyes turned serious. Finally, he decided to use his full strength to fight against Ning Fan. The two of them no longer spoke. They didn't even look at each other. However, the battle between them became even more intense. This was a battle of Dao will. In the eyes of Lin, Du Zhen, and the others, the two of them just stood there and didn't move at all. However, in reality, the two of them were engaged in a clash of Dao intense in their minds. The battle of Dao insights was extremely dangerous, and the slightest mistake would result in the collapse of one's Dao. In the mental world, the Maitreya monk was no longer dressed as a cultivator of the mortal world. Instead, he was a dignified golden Buddha with a bun on his head. He was carrying a magical cloth bag that could take away one's Dao psyche. Ning Fan also did not have the appearance of a white-robed young man. Instead, his Dao sense transformed into 10 gigantic butterflies that blotted out the sky. Each of them was of a different color. The first 8 types of the 10 giant butterflies represented his yin-yang rain, dark yin-yang, war yin-yang, lightning yin-yang, slaughter yin-yang, phoenix yin-yang, wood yin-yang and poison yin-yang respectively. The remaining 2 were slightly weaker. It meant that he had only cultivated the beginning of the Fu Li yin-yang technique and the heavenly bull yin-yang technique. 1 year passed, 2 years passed. In the blink of an eye, another 14 years had passed. It was the 21st year since he came to the Scarlet Rainbow Starry Sea. He had been fighting against Maitreya monk for a total of 14 years. In the real world, Ning Fan and Maitreya monk had been standing there silently for 14 years like statues. In the mental world, the two of them were still locked in battle. The only difference was that after 14 years, the 9-colored vine in front of him had completely matured and bore a 9-colored fruit that was filled with immense spatial power. The 9-colored vine in front of the Maitreya monk had completely withered. What on earth is Lord Killing Hall doing? Why is he fighting with that fat senior for 14 years without saying anything? None of the low-rank fantasy cloud sex cultivators could understand how dangerous the battle of Dao sense was. Only Du Zhen, whose surname was Lin, knew about it. Of course, he was too lazy to explain it to the low-rank disciples. Puchi. On this day, the Maitreya monk finally reacted. His body was the first to move. His legs went soft and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His aura quickly weakened. The moment the Maitreya monk regained his mobility, Ning Fan also moved. He did not spit out blood, but his face was slightly pale. It was obvious that the 14 years of battle of Dao will was a huge burden on him. Amitabha. Thank you benefactor for showing mercy and not completely obliterating this poor monk's Dao perception. This poor monk has lost this battle wholeheartedly. I don't have the face to compete for the great thousand rainbow. I'll take my leave now. The Maitreya monk let out a faint sigh. Then, he placed his palms together and bowed to Ning Fan before leaving dejectedly. Ning Fan looked at the back of the Maitreya monk who was leaving without saying a word. On the surface, he had won the battle of Dao will, but it did not mean that his current Dao will was stronger than the Maitreya monk. This was because the Maitreya monk didn't come with his main body. It was only an avatar. If this person had come with his true body, the odds of victory should be 50-50. A titled Buddhist cultivator is indeed powerful. No wonder the ancient texts say that a titled Buddhist cultivator is equivalent to a sovereign. If it wasn't for the fact that my Dao will had already grasped the yin-yang wood, even if I split my Dao will into 10 to attack this person, I'm afraid I wouldn't be his match. Compared to this person, the light Buddha of the Great Humble Clan who is also a half-step quasi-sage realm expert is indeed much weaker. I wonder how many more of these titled Buddhist cultivators are there in the Western Heaven. No matter what, he had won anyway. At least the result was good. That was enough for him. Ning Fan plucked the ripened 9-colored fruit and apologized to the 9-colored rainbow that was hanging high above the surface of the sea with a guilty expression. All living things had spirits. He could feel that this 9-colored rainbow also had a spirit. Under normal circumstances, he would need to wait for more than 4 million years for the Great Thousand Rainbow to ripen. However, he used a method similar to killing the goose that lays the golden eggs to catch the fish. In this way, even though he managed to collect some of the Great Thousand Rainbow in advance, it also caused the place to be unable to produce any more Great Thousand Rainbow in the next tens of millions of years. Senior Ning is actually talking to the rainbow. Someone noticed that Ning Fan was talking to the rainbow and each of them wore a strange expression. If Ning Fan wasn't their idol, they would certainly think that he was a lunatic. It's alright. He's really a polite young man. Only a divine being like Ning Fan who was connected to all living things could hear the rainbow's reply. The nine-colored rainbow was not angry at Ning Fan's behavior. Instead, it praised Ning Fan's politeness. I can't see the world that you can see. I can hear the world that you can't. Ning Fan might not be as good as Taoist Mu Song or that Maitreya monk in terms of opening his eyes. However, he also had his own abilities that others could not compare with. After successfully obtaining the Great Thousand Rainbow, Ning Fan did not immediately go into seclusion to cultivate. Instead, he boarded the illusory Cloud Sex Star boat and asked the two young ladies some questions. The questions he asked were naturally about the situation in the lower world. The two ladies had just ascended not long ago. Thus, they were quite familiar with the situation in the lower world. From the two ladies, Ning Fan learned that during the hundreds of years when he ascended to the eastern heaven, many of the ladies had already attained the void fragmentation realm under the guidance of Emperor Xia and the Old Devil. For example, Jiao Er and Mei Chen, who were originally at the void fragmentation realm, had even advanced to the rogue immortal realm one after another. In the eastern heaven, void fragmentation realm and rogue immortals were probably just ants in the eyes of true immortals. In the lower world, however, they were definitely considered as peak experts whose names shook the world. They were powerful enough to dominate the 9 worlds. When Ning Fan heard that even Ji He and the other ladies who disliked cultivation had become void refinement realm cultivators, he was speechless. At the same time, he felt gratified and nostalgic. Everything is fine in my hometown. That's enough. Ning Fan gave a few bottles of pills that he did not need to the two ladies as a reward for answering his questions. To him, those pills were just 7th and 8th revolution pills that he did not need. However, to the two ladies who were just at the divine transformation realm, they were definitely priceless treasures. The two ladies looked at Ning Fan even more bashfully. Then, they whispered their names to Ning Fan. The young lady who wore purple robes was called Si Yingyue. She was the direct descendant of a void fragmentation realm old monster in the heaven immortal world. The young lady who wore blue robes was called Su Manue. She was the young lord of a void fragmentation realm sect in the earth immortal world. The two of you are really fated. One is called Yingyue while the other is called Manue. No wonder you two are like sisters. Ning Fan smiled faintly. It was an unintentional remark. However, for some reason, the moment he uttered those words, he felt an indescribable heartache that instantly spread across his entire body. That kind of heartache did not come from the past. Instead, it came from the future. That kind of heartache seemed to want to tear his future into pieces. Samsara is a circle. The more Ning Fan comprehended samsara, the more he believed in this point. He was secretly shocked. He did not understand where this kind of heartache came from. However, he firmly believed that all the winds in this world must have their own reasons. This kind of heartache might not necessarily be groundless. On the contrary, this kind of heartache was highly likely to be a warning. It was similar to the sudden inspiration of cultivators. However, it was at a higher level and more mysterious than that. It was a kind of prediction at the level of samsara. If Ning Fan continues to walk down the path of samsara, it was highly likely that he would feel heartache and regret because of some reason that happened to the two ladies in the future, Si Yingyue, Su Manue. With Ning Fan's eyesight, he could not see anything wrong with the two ladies at all. At first, Ning Fan only treated the two ladies as passers-by. However, at this moment, their positions in his heart became unprecedentedly heavy. It had nothing to do with love. What he felt more was a kind of worry about the warning of samsara. Ning Fan secretly separated a trace of his spirit sense and left it in the bodies of the two ladies in case of emergencies. With their cultivation level, they naturally could not detect it. He wanted to see why the two ladies whom he met out of nowhere would give him a warning of samsara. Of course, Ning Fan would not give up everything he was doing just for a warning of samsara. After making some arrangements on the two ladies' bodies, he left the illusory cloud sex star ship and left the scarlet rainbow starry sea. After that, he found an unlucky abandoned planet at a certain time and place and started to refine the Kiliakosm rainbow. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. After Ning Fan accidentally destroyed tens of abandoned planets, he finally devoured the Kiliakosm rainbow. The progress of the pseudo-devil cavity had reached 50%. His speed had also improved. When he was flying, he could already clearly feel the power of space. The third thing that Ning Fan wanted to find was the Void Divine Tree, which was located in another eastern immortal forbidden land, the extreme Scarlet North Abyss. It was not a living Void Divine Tree but a withered tree that had been dead for countless years. The progenitor of the godly Void Pavilion had once comprehended the Tao and cultivated under this tree. That was how his spatial abilities became increasingly profound. Many powerful beings in the eastern heaven had come to this tree to comprehend the Tao. Some of them even thought of cutting it down and taking it away. However, even Taoist Mu Song could not cut down the withered Void Divine Tree or take it away. Every year, many old monsters of the eastern heaven would come to this place in an attempt to find the Void Divine Tree and comprehend its mysteries. Most of them would die in the extreme Scarlet North Abyss before they could even see the Void Divine Tree and become food for the ancient ferocious beasts in this place. Of course, Ning Fan was not afraid of the so-called ancient ferocious beasts. Instead, he was looking forward to finding them. However, to his disappointment, the quality of the ferocious beasts in this place was far inferior to the Scarlet Rainbow Starry Sea. At first, he wanted to kill 1 or 2 half-saint realm ferocious beasts along the way to make some undying ghost soldiers. However, after searching the entire place, he could not even find an immortal emperor realm ferocious beast. In this way, even if Ning Fan did not summon his servants to protect him, no ferocious beasts could disturb him while he was comprehending the Tao. He sat under the void sacred tree for 9 years. After 9 years, he stood up, covered in dust, took a step forward, and disappeared from the face of the world. At this moment, the pseudo-devil cavity had been developed to 70%. The fourth thing that Ning Fan wanted to find was located in the Nan clan. At the entrance of the Nan clan, Ning Fan arranged to meet Tan Tai Weiyu. He used some of the treasures in Gung Wu's treasure to exchange for the incomplete space refinement art of old immortal Nan Hua with the Nan clan. Tan Tai Weiyu could not help but laugh at Ning Fan. They are friends. Do friends need to be so serious when making a deal with each other? Ning Fan spent 6 years to comprehend the essence of this spatial secret technique and fused it into the pseudo-devil cavity. The progress of the pseudo-devil cavity had also reached 80%. Finally, Ning Fan was going to look for the 5th item. Speaking of which, he should have gone to the place he was going to a long time ago. Unfortunately, when he had just ascended to the eastern heaven, his cultivation base was too low. It was not enough for him to head to this place and fulfill his promise. Now that his cultivation base was strong enough, he could not spare any time to deal with this matter because he was busy with other matters. Coincidentally, the item he wanted to retrieve this time just happened to be here. He also planned to take advantage of this opportunity to repay the karma he owed back then. His destination was the true lightning world. In the past, Ning Fan was schemed against by the great Emperor Mo Luo of the ancient Devil Abyss. When he was on the verge of death, it was Lightning Emperor Tai Su who sacrificed himself to save Ning Fan. The reason why Lightning Emperor Tai Su saved Ning Fan's life was because he wanted a promise from Ning Fan. If you succeed in your cultivation one day, you must head to the True Thunder world and resolve the suffering of the True Thunder clan for 1 billion years. That is my hometown. Back then, I met an expert who advised me that I could only resolve the true lightning tribulation when the Purple Dipper disciple appeared. I can't be wrong. You are the disciple of Purple Dipper. You must have received the Celestial Emperor's teachings. Even the Northern Heaven Purple clan can't save the true Lightning clan. Only you can. This is my lifelong wish. I hope that you can help me fulfill my regret. Also, Fei Feng. If you head to the true Lightning world, you must help me look for someone. Her name is Fei Feng. Perhaps she is already married. Perhaps she is already dead. If she is still alive, you can give this pill formula to her. It can cure her chronic illness. You don't have to tell her that this pill formula is a gift from me. If she is already dead, please go to her grave and burn this pill formula. Then, I can die without regrets. The true Lightning world was not a world that ordinary cultivators could see. Instead, it was more like a world that could only be seen by cultivators who had opened their eyes. In that case, even the treasure-searching compass could only roughly locate the location of the true Lightning world. It was impossible to find the entrance of the true Lightning world from the endless starry sky. Fortunately, Ning Fan had already prepared the harmonious spirit compass with Lu Yan's power. Somewhere in the starry sky, Ning Fan took out immortal materials that could not be found in the Age of Chaos and set up some kind of special formation. Be it the immortal materials or the formation, they were all bought from the heaven-reaching sect. Without the help of the trading formation of the ancient country, it would be difficult for Ning Fan, who had not opened his eyes, to enter the true Lightning world even if he knew the specific location of the true Lightning world. After being busy for a few months, Ning Fan finally finished setting up the formation. At the moment when the formation was activated, a ray of purple lightning tore open the endless starry sky. No, it was not accurate to describe it with the word tear. It was a kind of unveiling. It was like unveiling a canvas on a drawing board. It was as if the scenery of the entire eastern heaven was just a piece of paper on that drawing board. After unveiling the previous piece of paper, the next piece of paper would be revealed. Ning Fan felt a flash of lightning in front of his eyes. He had already entered the inner part of the true Lightning world. In front of him was a sea of lightning which was dazzling and blinding. It was difficult to identify the direction. Ning Fan only knew that he had successfully entered the true Lightning world. However, he still did not know where exactly he was. Before he could carefully examine the situation of this place, two traces of ferocious chi suddenly came from within the rumbling lightning. They carried the tremendous aura force of an immortal king and continuously approached him. Strange. Why is there a member of the true Lightning clan in the outer region of the immortal sovereign seal? How did he escape? Could it be that he escaped by luck using that method, like what Tai Su did 50 million years ago? One of the immortal kings guessed. He. Who cares how he got out? It's not important. What's important is that I can feel that this person is very delicious. I will eat half of his flesh and you will eat the other half. Alright. They actually did not give Ning Fan any chance to speak and wanted to kill him at the outer region of this sea of lightning.